Chapter 15:13. Oh Huang said this with a fake smile, but deep down, she was very upset. She didn't understand. Wasn't it good for the myth streamer to damage the enemy's morale? Why did she reject it? Jiang Pengji's reason was simple. First, she had the strength to defeat the Nie family. There was no need to take this shortcut. Even if she won, it would not be honorable. Instead, she would be criticized as destiny. It sounded nice, but it was useless against those who were strong. How could she feel good if she said that she got her results by luck? Second, and this was also the most important reason, she wanted to take the opportunity to get rid of the system fragment. Other than the god-slaying sword in her hand, ordinary people could not deal with a spiritual life like the system. It was useless to kill Nie Yang. The system fragment would find a way to escape. If she missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to catch it in the future. To put it bluntly, this thing was a pile of **T. It would always jump out to annoy her when she didn't expect it. Killing it would solve the problem once and for all. Jiang Pengji did not explain to Oh Huang. Oh Huang could not ask in front of Wei Yong and the others. She could only bury her doubts in her heart. At that moment, Nie Qing's voice sounded. She asked a question that caught her off guard. Didn't you just say that Lu Shi is your lord? Why did you change your mind? Are you someone sent by Lu Shi or are you a mountain ghost? With Jiang Pengji's help, Wei Yong was coaxed, but Nie Qing was not so easy to fool. She still remembered that Oh Huang had told her that Jiang Pengji was her lord. Since she called her lord, it was obvious that she had a point. Nie Qing said sternly, "Don't lie to my father-in-law." Oh Huang was secretly sweating. He blamed himself for talking too much. It was not easy to smooth things over. Because Jiang Pengji could not hear the conversation between Nie Qing and Oh Huang, she could not help her. She could only rely on herself. Fortunately, she was quick-witted and thought of an excuse. Didn't I say that just to appease you? If my lord was really Lu Shi, would I help you? I should just cut my own throat and force your father-in-law to death. Then, your family would fall into endless internal strife. Nie Qing was stumped by her words. She said a little awkwardly, "I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I'm a magnanimous person. This little misunderstanding is nothing." Lucky Emperor heaved a sigh of relief and said nonchalantly, "But you, brother, I feel that you have a big problem. You are so pure and kind while Lu Shi is full of ink from head to toe. You will be at a disadvantage." Nie Qing didn't understand what "covered in ink from head to toe" meant, but he could relate it to the fact that Lucky Emperor said he was pure and kind. For a moment, he thought of Nie Yang, and his mood sank again. Being kind was not a bad habit, but Nie Qing had to admit that his kindness was untimely. Not only would he get himself killed, but he would also implicate the people around him. This time, he was lucky enough to run into the mountain ghost, and his father-in-law did not kill him. If he were to fall into the same trap again, would he still be so lucky? Nie Qing's talent was not bad, it was just that he usually liked to think in a positive direction. After this experience, he should have truly matured. It's not a bad thing to be kind. If you were in a peaceful era, you would have made friends all over the world. But it's a chaotic world now. Your father is gone, and no one can shelter you from the wind and rain. You can't continue being so pure. Lu Shi is too black-hearted. He's full of schemes. If you don't work hard, how can you protect your father's hard work? Nie Qing revealed a bitter smile. Thank you for your guidance, fairy. Lucky Emperor was stunned. He could not help but hug his head in frustration. She was on the streamer's side. Why would she comfort the leader of the opposing camp? Would the streamer expel her as a fan if she knew? Jiang Pengji did not know, and even if she did, she would not say anything. After all, the salted fishes were there to have fun and experience transmigration, not to be her subordinate and work for her. Jiang Pengji could not restrict the salted fish's preferences and choices. She would choose to respect them. Lucky Emperor comforted Niaqing, which showed that he was a kind and simple salted fish. After settling Niaqing, Lucky Emperor said, "Don't you need to send people to chase the Real Niayang?" Wei Ming said, "There's no rush. The spiritual support team is not fast. They can catch up in a day." Since that was the case, Lucky Emperor was not in a hurry. Just as she did not know what to say, Jiang Pengji reminded her to take advantage of Wei Ming. "I helped you and saved Niaqing's life. The deal is done. Thank you for your patronage." Wei Ming maintained his poise. "Just tell me what you like, fairy. We will definitely give it to you." "Huh, I like forthright people like you. My anxiety today was not in vain. I was afraid that I would turn into a box the moment I landed. If not for her quick-wittedness, coupled with the system's notification and Niaqing's assistance, she would definitely be dead. Now that the danger was averted, she would not be able to live up to her anxiety if she did not extort more good things. Lucky Emperor's first reaction was accessories. Headwear. "I want a set of headwear. I heard that Lu Shi sent a set of headwear for women. Is it still there? I want that." Wei Ming and Fan Chen's expressions were a little ugly. Even though Niel Yang had cleverly resolved the humiliation of sending a headwear for women, he was not happy to mention it. Lucky Emperor just had to rub salt into his wound. "I burned it as a sacrifice." Wei Ming's tone was slightly cold. "What a waste of God's gift," Lucky Emperor said. "Then, find a similar set." What a bunch of wastrels. Did they not know how expensive the set of gifts given by the host was? A tycoon offered 10 million but refused to sell it. Although it was a military camp, there were many spoils of war. If one looked carefully, one could find gold, silver, and jewelry. Wei Ming sent someone to search for a box for Lucky Emperor as a thank you gift. Naturally, Lucky Emperor wanted to accept all of them. However, the system reminded her that there was a weight and volume limit when she teleported back. If she exceeded the limit, she would be in trouble. Why is this happening? Lucky Emperor could not help but feel distressed. She wanted all of these treasures. They were the spoils of war that she had exchanged her life for. The system actually gave her an answer. The Dream of a Thousand Years event is not only to repay the audience's long-standing support, but also to correct history and ensure that the world does not collapse. If the experiencer takes too many items, it is very likely to cause a deviation in the historical timeline. Please understand. Lucky Emperor expressed her understanding towards this explanation. It was a pleasant surprise that she had gained something this time. She was not a greedy person, so she quickly calmed down. She endured the pain of picking and choosing. As far as the system allowed, she chose what she thought was the prettiest, the most favorite, and the most valuable. Niaqing could not stand it anymore. He said, "These are the thank you gifts from father-in-law. Fairy, you can take all of them. You don't understand. This is called an equivalent exchange. I can only receive what I give." Lucky Emperor's face was full of tears, but she still had to maintain the posture of an expert. She said earnestly, "Your life is only worth this little money. I can't take more, or I will suffer retribution." Niaqing was speechless. Chapter 15-14. Huang rebuked Niaqing, and his gloomy mood was finally lifted. However, the surrounding salted fishes were rather curious about how she was being picky and not accepting all of them. Why didn't she take everything Wei Dan gave her? It was a big box of jewelry, and there were at least 100 of them. In the end, the salted fish Huang sat on the ground and picked the lighter, expensive, and good-looking ones to put aside. There were about 10 of them. Jiang Pengji frowned and realized that things were not so simple. Looking at Huang's reaction, she probably wanted to take all of them, but she chose a portion. Obviously, there was a system restriction. Jiang Pengji asked her old chief, who was also online. You Abba, Jiang Xiaojiu, have you ever sent a parcel before? Jiang Pengji said, what kind of person do you think I am? Who hasn't used Interstellar Express in this era? You Abba, express delivery is also about the most important thing and the continuation of the wait. In layman's terms, dream of 1,000 years was the most important thing, including the transportation and the return ticket. More than that, there was an additional price to pay for the continuation of the wait, which ordinary people could not afford. Besides that, another important reason was the butterfly effect. If too many items were taken away, it would cause a serious deviation in history. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, you know the system's tricks very well, old chief. You Abba, because I have one here. Although it has some problems with its brain, it is obedient. Jiang Pengji, although it was called a system, it was actually one of the spiritual beings. Her old chief actually had one. Jiang Pengji could not help but ask, previously, you said that you got a new job after retiring. Is it convenient for you to tell me about the nature of the job? You Abba, it's a job. To put it bluntly, I just work for others. The only advantage is that I can travel at public expense and get reimbursed in full. I can see many interesting people and things. Although the place I travel to is poor and backward, the pay is good, so I bear with it. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, what you said is true, but you didn't say anything. You don't have to be so guarded against me, do you? Was there any difference between what she said and what she didn't say? You Abba, I have to be guarded against you. Everyone in the 7th Corps knew that Jiang Pengji was a thorn. They had to be careful when talking to her, lest they be exposed. Jiang Pengji rubbed her chin. She had a feeling that her old chief was hiding something. However, Jiang Pengji couldn't force her to speak if she didn't want to. She wouldn't harm her anyway. From the new system to the appearance of the old chief, Jiang Pengji vaguely sensed something, but her guess had yet to be confirmed. Your Abba, due to the confidentiality agreement we signed in the past, there are some things that you won't be able to find out even if you want to because I can't tell you. The only thing that could be revealed was that the human alliance was relying on this piece of land to revitalize the overall situation. Jiang Pengji was dumbfounded. She then thought of the few subsystems that she had killed. The system was the former heavenly brain that had a grudge against the Federation. From the looks of it, the burden on his shoulders was quite heavy. However, it sounded a bit exaggerated to say that the entire human alliance was counting on her to save the situation. Your Abba, oh, this is not an exaggeration at all. You will know in the future. Jiang Pengji was kept in suspense and her heart was itching. It was fine if she didn't know that there was such a secret, but the old general told her that there was a secret but refused to tell her the content. This was too much. Old chief, do you know of a genre of online novels called fast travel? Jiang Pengji was about to probe further when the old chief's meat bun profile picture immediately darkened. Your friend, your Abba, has gone offline. Jiang Pengji was speechless. She seemed to know something. Old chief, you've fallen. She rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. The first half of her life was quite normal, but after her transmigration, all sorts of monsters and demons appeared. However, now is not the time to complain about this. The most important thing is to solve this system fragment. Although the system was not a good thing, its existence was simply a bug. It would be better to solve it as soon as possible. On the other side, Wei Yong and the others did not dare to take even half a step away from Huang. You guys are staring at me like this. I feel like I'm a prisoner. Huang could not help but complain to Nie Qing about the behavior of Wei Yong and the others. If she was given 2 sticks, she could simulate tears in prison. Nie Qing's mood had recovered a lot, and the fatigue in her smile was not as strong. Hearing Huang's willful and unguarded words, she could not help but smile. Father-in-law and the others will not be able to dispel their suspicions with just a few words. You said that you only possessed this body for 12 hours, but they may not believe you completely. If we don't keep an eye on you, it is hard to guarantee that no accidents will occur. Please forgive me, fairy. Huang glanced at the system countdown and hugged the precious box tightly. The jewelry in the box was precious, and the box used to contain them was carved from a whole piece of red sandalwood. It was extremely expensive. Seeing that the countdown was about to end, Huang hesitated for a while and left a message for Nie Qing. I can't understand people like you who see glory and responsibility as more important than the heavens. Compared to you, I am more like a layman. I only know that living is more important than anything else. Only when you are alive can you create hope and opportunities for the future. If you die, you have nothing. Brother Nie Qing, take care. Nie Qing did not understand, but he smiled and thanked her. After a while, he felt his entire body sink. What happened? Nie Qing had just opened his mouth when he heard Nie Yang's voice. He raised his hand and was shocked to find that he could control his body. Only then did he understand that the fairy had left. Nie Qing could not help but look at Wei Yong and Fan Chen. The two had different reactions, but their eyes were filled with worry, and they could not help but redden. Wei Yong called out tentatively, "Young master." Nie Qing choked with sobs, "Father-in-law." Fan Chen could not help but rub his eyes, saying in shock, "That really was a fairy." When Huang left, the box she was hugging also disappeared. Wei Yong and Fan Chen saw this scene with their own eyes. Only now did they completely believe Huang's words. Nie Qing took a deep breath and said, "The most important thing now is to quickly get Nie Yang back and swap identities." Now that Nie Qing was using Nie Yang's appearance, other than Wei Yong and Fan Chen, the other officials would not believe him. If Nie Yang made a false accusation at a critical moment, not only would Nie Qing's life be in danger, the two elders would also be implicated. In terms of ruthlessness, Nie Qing was far from being Nie Yang's match. Chapter 15:15. Wei Yong said, "Young master, don't be anxious. Young master should not appear in this matter." Nie Qing asked, "Why?" He wanted to personally ask Nie Yang why he treated him this way. How had Nie Qing wronged Nie Yang in the slightest? Were there many years of brotherly love all fake? Wei Yong said, "According to what that mountain ghost said, Nie Yang has the help of an evil demon. If you appear, how can the evil demon not guess our intentions? I'm afraid we'll alert the enemy. When this old subject captures Nie Yang, there's still time for young master to say or ask anything." Nie Qing said in shame, this son-in-law's fault, I didn't think of this." Wei Yong said, "After experiencing this, young master should understand that a person's heart is hard to predict. Nie Yang, take this as a lesson." Nie Qing thought of something, his face pale as he said, "Father's poison, was really done by him?" Wei Yong said, "Before the late master died, he sent someone to find a bottle of poison in Nie Yang's study. This poison was the same as the late master's. However, this alone is not enough to convict Nie Yang. After that, the evidence of Nie Yang's scheme to murder young master can be considered irrefutable." Nie Qing's eyes were as red as a rabbit's, tears rolling down his face. "In that case, it was I who killed father," Wei Yong said. Even the late master and this old subject were deceived by Nie Yang, much less the inexperienced young master at that time. This matter could not be blamed on Nie Qing, it could only be blamed on the vicious and merciless Nie Yang. Because they had to support the spirit, Nie Yang and the others did not walk quickly. The men sent by Wei Yong and Wei Yong caught up not long after the sky turned dark. Nia Yang pretended to be surprised. What happened? The messenger said in panic, reporting to Lord, something big happened in the camp. At noon, military advisor Wei and registrar Fan died one after the other. Even though Nia Yang had been mentally prepared, he was still shocked speechless by this news. However, the people who died were father-in-law and father's important officials. Nia Yang was now using Nia Qing's identity and could not remain indifferent. He cried, saying, "Father-in-law and the others are more than that. Father is gone, they don't want to live anymore." Nia Yang's acting was obviously at the level of a best actor. He cried at the drop of a hat and acted with sincerity, like another Nia Qing. Wei Yong and Fan Chen sacrificed themselves for their masters was a major event. Nia Yang took the initiative to meet the messenger and did not bring many people with him. The messenger was Wei Yong's trusted subordinate. In order not to arouse Nia Yang's and Yao Xia's suspicions, the messenger did not know that Wei Yong and the others were fine. He even thought that the two of them had really committed suicide for their master. Before sacrificing himself for his master, Wei Yong had left a secret suicide note for Nia Qing. Since it was a confidential matter, he naturally had to dismiss his subordinates and hand it over to them alone. Although Nia Yang was shrewd, Wei Dan was also a wily old fox. In the end, Nia Yang was still one step behind. "You did." Nia Yang opened the letter. Just as he was about to read it, Wei Yong's confidant suddenly rushed forward, covered his mouth, and subdued him. At this time, a body double that looked very similar to Nia Qing changed into morning clothes and a bamboo hat, switching identities with Nia Yang. "Tie him up and gag him." Just as Nia Yang was about to struggle, several people pounced on him and tied him up. They put a bag as tall as a person and carried him away. The body double continued to carry Nia Yang's spirit to Bianzhou. Nia Yang struggled for a while, but realized that it was all in vain, so he simply gave up. "System. What's going on?" The system was silent for a long time before it spoke. "There are two possibilities. Either Nia Qing is dead, and Wei Yong did not sacrifice himself for his master, and instead endured the pain to avenge his son-in-law. Or, Nia Qing and Wei Yong are not dead, and your plan has already been exposed by them, and they are now going to capture you and interrogate you." Nia Yang's mouth was stuffed with a piece of cloth, and his entire body was curled up in the sack. "You're saying Nia Qing and Wei Yong have already seen through our plan?" The system said. "Yes, it looks like. I've underestimated these ordinary people." Nia Yang's breathing quickened. The sack was stuffy and hot. He had been placed on the back of a horse, and his internal organs were about to shift. "Aren't you very powerful? Is there no way to fix this?" The system was also very angry. This was originally a trap to kill Nia Qing, but it did not expect its host to lose his life. Although Nia Yang was somewhat annoying and had secretly tried to resist it, the system was still satisfied with Nia Yang. "There's nothing I can do now. So what if Nia Yang could escape this time? He would lose his noble identity and status, and he would have to conceal his identity and hide in the future. The already weak emperor's energy in Nia Yang's body would dissipate completely. To the system, he was useless. The only use he had was for it to continue to absorb the last bit of emperor's energy. In fact, as one of the candidates to possess emperor's energy, Nia Yang's emperor's energy was no weaker than Jiang Pengji's at the beginning. If not for Nia Yang's rise and the system's interference, Nia Yang would have become the ruler of the Nia family, and the emperor's energy would have become stronger and stronger along with his status. Who knew that Nia Yang, who should have been content with his lot, would rise and take away Nia Yang's emperor's energy? The other part of the emperor's energy was stolen by the dormant system bit by bit. Nia Yang's luck was getting worse and worse, and now he was in a dead end. Nia Yang chuckled. "Are you going to give up on me?" The system said, "It's not that I want to give up on you, it's that you're too disappointing. Nia Yang said sarcastically, then why aren't you leaving? The system said, we've known each other for a while. No matter what, I have to send you on your last journey. In fact, the system was unwilling to leave only because it was greedy. After all, Nia Yang still had some Emperor's energy on him. It couldn't waste it. When Wei Yong and the other two saw the battered and exhausted Nia Yang, they felt very conflicted. Nia Qing squatted down and removed the cloth from his mouth. He asked coldly, why did you do this? Nia Yang didn't struggle, and he couldn't be bothered to quibble on his behalf. He simply told the truth. Because of power. When you poisoned my father, at that time, was he in your way? How could you be so heartless? Nia Qing's chest burned with rage. He grabbed Nia Yang's collar with both hands and lifted him up. His gaze was ferocious. Nia Yang didn't look him in the eye. He turned his head and said, it's only a matter of time. He who strikes first gains the upper hand. Nia Qing was so angry that his vision turned black and his molars chattered. He almost couldn't resist the urge to strangle Nia Yang. The so-called brotherly respect, is also for the sake of this scheme? You treat me very well. I'm very grateful. Nia Yang's eyes darkened. He said in a low voice, however, you only gave me 1% of what you have. What I want is 1,000% more than what you have. I didn't want to harm you. But, who asked you to block my way? Nia Qing, ask yourself. Is your personality really suitable to be a duke? Pure, weak, naive, the Nia family will only walk towards destruction in your hands. As a descendant of the Nia family, if you can sit in this position, why can't I? Everything Nia Yang had was given to him by the Nia family. He didn't fight for it himself. Nia Yang didn't feel guilty taking it for himself. Chapter 15-16. You want power, why didn't you say so, why didn't you say so? Nia Qing lost his usual elegance and calmness, his eyes bloodshot as he choked, if you had just a little bit of trust in me, just a little bit of honesty, I would have done my best to help you. What you want, and what I have, I will do my best to give it to you. Nia Yang. When have I ever owed you anything? But why did you take my father away from me? Nia Qing was on the verge of breaking down. Everyone was moved, even the cold-hearted Nia Yang didn't know how to retort. Because he knew that what Nia Qing had just said was true. What you want, why didn't you say so? Why did you have to kill my father, why? Nia Yang's expression darkened, his bloodied lips quivering, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't. Facing Nia Qing's questioning, even if Nia Yang was so heartless, he felt a heavy stone in his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. The system sneered, are you touched? You actually believed his words? If Nia Yang didn't die, how could Nia Qing have power? Nia Qing's words were just to lie to you. If Nia Yang didn't die, he wouldn't have just sat back and watched his precious son assist you. Why was it so hard to let go of power once you picked it up? It wasn't just because power was attractive, it was also because power could protect oneself. For example, if Nia Qing convinced his father, Nia Yang, to gradually give power to Nia Yang, then wouldn't Nia Qing be worried that Nia Yang would harm him after he gained power? According to Nia Yang's temper, it was rare for him to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. Losing power was equivalent to taking off all the armor, exposing the defenseless soft meat in front of the enemy. Nia Yang laughed bitterly, whether it was fake or sincere, at least he could say that. No matter what, he's sincere now. Nia Qing treated him sincerely, but this little bit of kindness couldn't stop Nia Yang from pursuing power. Just kill me, there's nothing else to say. Nia Yang said hoarsely, I poisoned Nia Yang, I admit it. Nia Qing thought Nia Yang would quibble for him, he didn't expect him to admit it so directly. He pointed at Nia Yang's heart and enunciated each word clearly, is power really that attractive in your eyes? Nia Yang said indifferently, isn't the purpose of a person's life to live a better life? Nia Qing had to admit that Nia Yang's words were correct, but he could not accept the methods Nia Yang used to pursue power. He relied on viciousness to get to this point, annihilating his conscience as a human. Even if he were to rule over the world, he was just a tyrant that others would turn pale at the mention of. Nia Yang. Nia Qing's breathing was heavy. Her tears had long since stopped, but the redness in her eyes was even more frightening than before. She grabbed Nia Yang's collar and pulled him closer to her. Her clear eyes were filled with viciousness as she gritted her teeth and said, I sever all ties with you, and we will not meet again on the road to the Yellow Springs. Nia Yang forced a smile and said, of course we won't meet. If I travel faster, I might be able to see Duke Guangshan. When Wei Yong and Fan Chen heard this, their expressions changed drastically. In a rage, Nia Qing kicked the tied-up Nia Yang to the ground. Nia Yang rubbed the side of his face on the ground, his cheeks bleeding from the grit. He smiled and bent his waist, his knees curling on the ground as he used the force to sit up. He looked at Nia Qing out of the corner of his eye and said with some pity, does elder brother know that Duke Guangshan passed away yesterday at the Chou hour? Even though Wei Yong and Fan Chen had ordered Nia Yang to shut up, he still finished speaking without fear of death. Yesterday, the Chou hour? Nia Qing was somewhat confused as he turned to look at Wei Yong and Fan Chen. Father had passed 7 days ago, how could he have passed away yesterday at the Chou hour? Seeing this, Wei Yong knew he could not hide it and said directly, former lord did pass away last night at the Chou hour. Previously, when he was about to enter the coffin, he choked and woke up. Former lord ordered us to hide it and secretly make arrangements, which is why he did not tell everyone. Nia Qing said, Father, hid it even from me? Wei Dan glanced at Nia Yang with some difficulty. Nia Qing immediately felt sorrow in his heart. His already wounded heart received another blow. Fan Chen said, former lord did this not because he did not trust lord. In reality, former lord planned to spread the news of lord's death to see if those ambitious fellows could sit still. Once these people are dealt with, lord's future path will be smooth. Former lord put a lot of thought into this. Nia Qing could not listen to anything. Looking at the situation, Wei Yong and Fan Chen must have worked together to hide his father in the last few days of his life, lying alone on his sickbed, waiting for death to come. Illness not only tortured the body, but also the mind. As a son, he felt suffocated at the thought. Father had no children to serve him before he passed away. Who knew how he felt? After a series of blows, he was no longer in the mood to care about Nia Yang. Father-in-law, Fan Chen. Nia Yang will be handed over to you. Nia Qing threw the sword at his waist to one side, saying weakly, follow the plan, do what needs to be done. Take him away from here. I don't want to see him again. I want to be alone. Nia Yang's eyes widened when he heard this. He asked, why not kill me yourself? Nia Qing said without turning his head, I don't want to dirty my hands. Wei Yong saw Nia Qing leave and sighed, if this matter can teach young lord to be ruthless, it's not too bad. He had someone put a large sack over Nia Yang's head and secretly sent him out of the camp. Nia Yang lay on the carriage in deep thought. The system asked him in surprise, is Nia Qing crazy? Does he want to let you go? Will you let the person who killed your father go? Nia Yang asked sarcastically. He seemed to have guessed something. He closed his eyes to conserve his energy. Memories of the past quickly appeared in his mind. Happy, sad, angry, all sorts of things that made up his life. I'm wearing Nia Qing's face now. Other than Wei Yong and a few others, no one will know that I'm an imposter. If I cause a ruckus in the camp and accidentally attract the attention of Nia Liang's old officials, Nia Qing won't be able to explain himself. Naturally, he has to be executed secretly. The system was still the system. Even though it was very capable, it was too arrogant. It did not bother to figure out the thoughts of ants. This explanation was reasonable, so it did not continue asking. Nia Yang snorted coldly and his lips curled into a sly smile. It was precisely because the system did not bother to figure out the thoughts of ants that it was destined to fail. What kind of personality did Nia Qing have? He would rather something happen to him than let the Nia family fall into chaos. If he did not have a way to return to his position, Nia Qing would not dare to touch him. Even if he killed his father, he would grit his teeth and endure it for now. After all, Nia Qing was too important to Nia Ying. Nia Qing was ruthless enough to kill him. It was obvious that he had a way to restore his original appearance. Either he found an expert, or Nia Qing knew some secret, such as Nia Yang being possessed by a demon. Killing Nia Yang was easy, but getting rid of this demon was very difficult. When Nia Yang guessed this, the image of Jiang Pengji's posture on the battlefield suddenly appeared in his mind. If he was right, Nia Qing planned to get rid of him and the system together. Chapter 15-17. Since they were bound to each other, why not go to hell together? After a long time, Nia Yang heard the voices of another group of people. You brought them? Yes. Do you want to inspect them? Yes. After the conversation, Nia Yang's sack was untied. Before he could adapt to the sudden sunlight, the person came forward and put something around his neck. He looked down and saw that it was a seal used by Taoists to summon gods. The seal was made of jade and had a unique and exquisite design. It was 7 inches long and 2.5 inches long. It was as white as snow. Even if he couldn't touch it with his hands, he could feel the cold air around it. What kind of process was this? Nia Yang frowned and turned to look at the other group of people. His pupils shrank when he saw what they were wearing. Weren't they soldiers under the enemy's command? Is the inspection done? The person pinched Nia Yang's face and smiled. Good quality goods. Tell your master that it's done before sunset. Humph, please don't play tricks. The person smiled. My master won't be able to eat or sleep in peace with such a monster alive. We are on the same page on this. Nia Yang had already guessed it, so he could more or less guess it, but the system was not so calm. Its voice was almost hoarse. Why is it the Sunfire Seal? The Sunfire Seal? Nia Yang was curious when he heard the unfamiliar term. You mean, the thing hanging around my neck? He could hear the fear in the system, which made him feel better. He searched through everything he knew but couldn't find anything related to the Sunfire Seal. If there's a Sunfire Seal, is there a Shuayin Seal? The system sneered and didn't answer. Nia Yang asked it. Is there something you're afraid of in this world? The system sneered. If I was at my peak, I wouldn't be afraid of this thing. It was almost destroyed, but who knew that dog money would repair it? In order to capture me, they are really generous. They are even willing to take out the 10 great ancient artifacts. The Sunfire Seal and the Shuayin Seal were a pair of artifacts. They could shock the Yin and Yang realms with terrifying power. Although their master had passed away many years ago, they were more than enough to suppress the system. In the silence, Nia Yang was brought to Jiang Pengji. It really is you. The system had once said on the battlefield that the sword in Jiang Pengji's hand was terrifying. Nia Yang was not surprised to see her today. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, You don't seem surprised at all. You have a good mentality. It's a pity that you met the wrong person. Nia Yang was puzzled. You met a bad person? Jiang Pengji said, The thing in your body calls itself the system, right? Do you know how evil that thing is? What it gives you is far less precious than what it steals from you. If it hadn't interfered, your future would be much better than it is now. If Nie Yang hadn't been instigated to poison in advance, Nie Yang wouldn't have stood on the stage, let alone taken control of the Nie family. Zixiao had said that in his previous life, the leader of the Nie clan was this sinister brat who didn't reveal himself. Nie Yang smiled bitterly. I never thought that the Duke of Lanting would be such a kind person. He was clearly a prisoner, but the tone of the other party's voice did not sound arrogant or unreachable. Jiang Pengji used her thumb to press against the handle of the knife. The long knife was slightly unsheathed, and the white light on the blade was dim. Do you have any last words? Nie Yang asked, what will happen to it? Do you see my knife? If my knife is compared to a human, that thing is an edible meat to the knife. It will end up the way a human eats meat, Jiang Pengji said. Other than that, do you have any last words? Nie Yang saw that she was calm, and his fear of dying lessened a lot. I do have one thing that I hope the Duke of Lanting can fulfill, Nie Yang said. I know that I have a clear conscience, but I still owe someone. After I die, I hope the Duke of Lanting can cremate my body. Burning my bones to ashes might be able to slightly appease the hatred in that person's heart. Since he couldn't escape death, he might as well die quickly and make his last words clear. Jiang Pengji said, I've heard that when a person is about to die, his words are kind. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, you still have a sense of responsibility. Nie Yang saw her pull out the long knife. His lips paled and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. And, the Duke of Lanting, you must not let that demon go. As soon as he finished speaking, a white light shone in front of him. Nie Yang felt a chill on his neck. His vision went black and he didn't know what happened. Jiang Pengji saw Nie Yang's head roll on the ground. His skin squirmed and changed into a strange face. Disgust flashed in her eyes. The system, this thing is really harmful. For the god-slaying knife, blood was far less delicious than the system. Due to the suppression of the seal, it couldn't leave Nie Yang's body. When the god-slaying knife swept past, the system was also forcibly sucked into the knife. The condensed spiritual energy turned into thousands of rays of blue light and was devoured by the god-slaying knife. Jiang Pengji raised the god-slaying knife and looked at it. Part of the totem on the blade had recovered. Judging by its size, it should be about 3/5 of the whole blade. She used her mind to examine the blade and found that the white misty object inside the blade had changed again. It had turned from a mist to a condensed flesh. The tube between the disintegrated spiritual energy of the system and the white ball was also 10 times thicker than before. Every time it was absorbed, the white ball would tremble and let out a faint thud, like a beating heart. As soon as she thought of this, she retracted her mind and said, I heard that some knives have a spirit. Is it possible that this thing is one too? Jiang Pengji couldn't suppress her curiosity and asked the old chief. He waited for a long time before replying. You Abba, the god-slaying knife you mentioned is the key to the Federation surviving this crisis. The thing inside is not a spirit. Jiang Pengji asked, Old chief, can you be more specific? You Abba, I signed a confidentiality agreement. Jiang Pengji said, You're not in the Federation. The confidentiality agreement is nothing. You Abba, the Federation was doomed to have such a reserve marshal. She took the lead in ignoring the confidentiality agreement. She was annoyed by Jiang Pengji's questions. She gave a simple reply and went offline. Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and snorted. Can a guilty conscience be solved by going offline? Looking at the god-slaying knife, Jiang Pengji murmured, It's true that the god-slaying knife can restrain the system, but it devours the system like it's food every time. It's weird no matter how I look at it. It makes me feel like an old mother who hunts down the system just to find food for her child. The god-slaying saber laid across her lap quietly and without any reaction. Chapter 15:18. My lord, what should we do with Nie Yang's corpse? Wei Xi saw Jiang Pengji walk out of the tent and hurriedly went forward to ask. Jiang Pengji said, "Nia Yang's last words were that he hoped I could cremate his corpse." Cremate? Wei Xi was shocked. Although his lord liked to use fire to dispose of enemy and ally corpses on the battlefield, that was because the rotting of corpses could easily cause a large-scale plague. It was a last resort. Based on the current trend, corpses were not to be desecrated, not to mention cremation. Wasn't this what people thought of as burning the bones and scattering the ashes? He never expected that Nia Yang would be the one to suggest cremation. Why did he leave such a last word? Wei Xi could not figure it out. According to his understanding of Nia Yang in his previous life, he was not a kind person despite his young age. He said that he had a clear conscience, but he still owed someone. He made the decision to burn himself to death. Most likely, it had something to do with the person he owed. Perhaps he wanted to atone for his sins, Jiang Pengji said. I will fulfill his wish and return his ashes to Nia Yang. Yes. The moment Nia Yang died and the system was destroyed, not only did Nia Yang's corpse return to its original appearance, but Nia Qing, who was far away in the Nia camp, also felt an unfamiliar throbbing in his chest. A strange feeling came from all over his body, as if there were some worms wriggling on his body. Father-in-law, Nia Qing could not help but call out. Wei Yong and Fan Chen, who were patiently waiting outside, heard the commotion and rushed in. Young lord! My lord! As the two called out to him, they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw with their own eyes that Nia Qing's body had grown a little, his shoulders had widened, and his face had undergone a drastic change. Does the young lord feel unwell anywhere? Wei Yong saw that Nia Qing had returned to his original appearance and heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly went forward to grab his arms and carefully examined him from head to toe. His eyes were overflowing with tears of excitement. When he realized that his actions were disrespectful, he hurriedly retracted his arms. Nia Qing said gently, "There's no discomfort. Father-in-law, don't worry." Fan Chen went forward and smiled. In that case, the demon and Nia Yang have been executed? We don't have to worry anymore. Nia Qing had been about to smile, but hearing Nia Yang's words, the corners of his lips that had just risen stiffened and he silently retracted them. Seeing his reaction, Wei Yong was a bit worried, but he didn't say anything else. Young master, this matter shouldn't be publicized. Nia Yang had slaughtered his own clan for his own selfish desires and plotted to murder the young master. Now that he had been executed, the case could be considered closed and the Nia clan could be given an explanation. Right now, the most important thing is to help the deceased master return home. Young master, rest a little tonight and set off tomorrow. With a few words, Wei Yong pushed the blame for Nia Yang's massacre of the Nia clan elders onto Nia Yang. In any case, Nia Yang was already a dead man. No matter how many scapegoats were thrown at him, would he be able to crawl out of the ground and protest? Nia Qing was distracted and listened to Wei Yong's arrangements. Not long after sunset, Jiang Pengji sent someone to place Nia Yang's ashes in a ceramic box and send it to the Nia camp. Nia Yang's last words were delivered along the way. Nia Qing didn't speak for a long time after hearing it. He stared at the urn of ashes in a daze, his thoughts unknown. Wei Yong asked him how he planned to deal with the urn of ashes. What Nia Yang had done was destined not to be buried in the ancestral grave. If Wei Yong were to decide, he wanted to scatter the ashes cleanly and let Nia Yang be a lonely ghost for the rest of his life. Nia Qing said, "Father-in-law, I want to bring him back to Bianzhou and find a place to bury him." He was already dead. Nia Qing didn't want to pursue the matter any further. Even if he scattered Nia Yang's ashes cleanly, what use was there besides venting his anger? Rather than torturing the souls of the dead, it was more like lashing the hearts of the living. Wei Yong said, "Everything shall be as the young master says." Nie Qing asked again. As for Lu Shi, did father have any other instructions before he died? The two armies were facing off against each other. They had only temporarily stopped fighting because of Nie Liang's funeral, but the battle that had to be fought still had to be fought unless one side retreated. Jiang Pengji currently had the upper hand. The Nie clan had suffered significant losses, but it hadn't reached the point where they had to retreat. Wei Yong said, the late lord did make arrangements before he died, but because of Nie Yang's matter, it was temporarily put on hold. Nie Qing heaved a sigh of relief and said, that's good. I'll have to trouble father-in-law with the matters at the front lines. Nie Qing could not be delayed in bringing the spirit back to his hometown. Nie Qing set off the next day. After secretly sending Nie Qing away, Wei Yong's expression darkened. He looked at Zhangjiang Pass with anger in his eyes. Even though Nie Yang had poisoned Nie Liang, it was Jiang Pengji who had angered Nie Liang over and over again and caused his early death. This debt had to be paid. Jiang Pengji looked at the letter of challenge in her hands and laughed involuntarily. She smiled helplessly and said, I just helped them, and they're going to deal with me. The salted fish expressed their disdain. After all, they were the clearest about what Jiang Pengji had done. Tudu Feiqiu, Wei Yong said that he wanted to deal with the streamer. Nie Liang's head is already over. If he didn't say anything, he would be slapping himself in the face. Gatorade, streamer, this is called the villain complaining first. It's obvious that you angered Nie Liang to death first. It's not wrong for them to deal with you. Jiang Pengji shook her head. She raised her hand and slammed the letter of challenge on the table. She shouted loudly outside the tent, quickly get the military counselors here. Before the soldiers could lift their feet, they saw Qiguan Rang walking toward the commander's tent with a solemn expression. Wen Zheng, you came just in time. I have something to talk to you about. Qiguan Rang said, my lord, there's no hurry. I have an urgent report from Zhangzhou. Jiang Pengji reached out and took the letter from Qiguan Rang. She said, forget it. Nie Liang is dead. The Nie family is without a leader. Nie Qing is still a young and inexperienced child. He's not a big threat. What's happening in Zhangzhou? Why is Wen Zheng so anxious? It was said to be an urgent report, but it was actually old news from a few days ago. Jiang Pengji opened the letter and read 10 lines at a glance. The more she read, the tighter her brows knitted. Flames rose in her heart. This group of gentry clans in Zhangzhou. Are all of them itching for a beating? Jiang Pengji did not expect that the first problem they encountered would not come from Yang Tao's forces, but from the gentry clans in Zhangzhou. In order to further understand the water situation in Zhangzhou, Yang Si and the others advanced step by eliminating the water bandits. Later, they were obstructed by the navy under Yang Tao's command. Several small-scale water battles broke out between the two parties. They fought inextricably with their strong combat power. Looking at the battle situation, the gentry clans in Zhangzhou could not sit still. When they heard the news of Nie Liang's death, the scales began to tilt in Jiang Pengji's favor. Yang Tao had fewer troops and was weak. Jiang Pengji could fight 2 against 1 with ease. The outcome of the battle was not optimistic. Chapter 15-19. As mentioned earlier, the waters in Zhangzhou were developed and pirates ran amok. These pirates, who had been operating for many years, seemed to be of humble origins, but in fact, they were inextricably linked to the officials of various counties. If not for that, it would not have been so difficult for Yang Jian to clear out the pirates back then. Of course, these relationships could not be exposed to the public, so they could only interact in secret. In order to protect their family business from being affected, some aristocratic families also had interests entangled with the pirates. They even had spies planted in these water bandits. Yang Si and the others used fishing to enforce the law, destroying many water bandits and recruiting many young and strong pirates. Among them were spies. Through these spies, the aristocratic families sent friendly messages to Fu Wang and the others, hoping to form a good relationship. Fu Wang and the others thought about it and knew that it was unreliable. They did not know if it was their own behavior or Yang Tao's instructions. Feng Zhen was from Zhangzhou's Anshan County and was a descendant of an aristocratic family. He was quite familiar with the tricks of this circle. He said, "I'm just testing them. Whether or not my lord can conquer Zhangzhou, it will be good for them. If Jiang Pengji conquered Zhangzhou, they would have a natural advantage by choosing sides in advance. Even if it was only a little, it would be good. If Jiang Pengji failed, and they did not show any obvious behavior of choosing sides, Yang Tao could not settle the score with them." Over the next few days, he received several letters from several families. Yang Si could not help but sneer and ridicule. Yang Tao hasn't fallen yet, but they can't sit still. They have no loyalty at all. Feng Zhen shook his head and said, "This is just their instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm." Fu Wang also said, "Such despicable people cannot be trusted." After all, Zhangzhou was Yang Tao's territory. Who knew if there were spies planted by him among these people who seemed to be surrendering? Although they were suspicious, they still had to accept the letter. Otherwise, it would be a loss to completely push them into Yang Tao's arms. It was better to hang around with an ambiguous attitude. When some aristocratic families saw that their goodwill did not receive a positive response, they were a little flustered. At this time, Fu Wang led the troops to attack Dafang, which was south of Zhangzhou. Qi Kuang was in charge of the navy. The troops were divided into two routes and advanced by water. Dafang was a small place. Due to its geographical advantage and convenient water route from south to north, it was relatively prosperous and had a large floating population. As one of Zhangzhou's gateways, Dafang had a certain military weight due to its smooth waterway and the advantage of connecting the north and the south. The county magistrate's surname was Xia, and he was born into a local aristocratic family. Seeing Fu Wang's army approaching menacingly, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Feng Zhen thought about it carefully, then smiled and said, "This person likes to sail with the wind and has a timid temperament. General, why don't you give him a scare?" Fu Wang looked at Feng Zhen. "How?" Feng Zhen said, "Secretly send a letter to them, ordering them to open the city gates and surrender in 3 days. Otherwise, we will slaughter all the commoners." Yang Si rolled his eyes at Feng Zhen. Was this kid for real? No matter which era it was in, massacres would always be criticized, and no one dared to speak of it lightly. Fu Wang shook his head and said, "No, if word of this gets out, it will inevitably damage the Lord's reputation." Feng Zhen said, "It's just to scare people. It's not like we're really mobilizing troops to massacre the city. General, please don't worry." Yang Si's eyes almost rolled to the top of his head as he sneered, "Feng Langzi, can't you come up with some reliable ideas?" Feng Zhen said, "You don't know that Yang Jian's former subordinates aren't in Daifang. On the contrary, many of the local rich families have some minor conflicts with Yang Jian. Years ago, Yang Jian led troops to clear out the pirates and found out that a few of the rich families in Daifang were in cahoots with the pirates. If it weren't for the fact that someone was adamantly stopping him, Yang Jian would probably have killed them all. Knowing that defending the city was hopeless, they wouldn't sacrifice their lives to defend Daifang for Yang Tao. If we can take this place without bloodshed, it will more or less serve as a deterrent. This will also be a great boost to the morale of our army." Yang Si said, "There's always a chance." Feng Zhen said, "If they refuse to surrender, then we'll use troops to knock down the city gates of Daifang. After that, we'll frame the massacre on the county magistrate guarding the city. We'll say that he's afraid of the might of our army and worried that the commoners will flee, so he purposely spread rumors to discredit the Lord. It's just a matter of a few words. History books were written by the victors, and the losers had no right to speak. After hearing this, Yang Si revealed an indescribable expression. He cupped his hands at Yang Si and said in a strange tone, "This humble one is convinced." When Feng Longzi was shameless, he was almost comparable to the Lord. He had lost. Fu Wang adopted Feng Zhen's opinion and issued a letter of challenge. When County Magistrate Xia saw Fu Wang's threat, his legs suddenly turned to jelly. According to the letter of challenge, Fu Wang would lead the 80,000 troops to attack Daifang. If they didn't know what was good for them, the 80,000 troops could trample Daifang to the ground with one foot. If he resisted stubbornly, the result would be the lives of his family and the lives of all the commoners in the city. What should we do? There are only 8,000 troops in the city. How can we fight against 80,000? County Magistrate Xia was indeed as Feng Zhen had said. He had a timid personality and didn't have his own opinions at critical moments. People didn't know how good Jiang Pengji's troops were in water battles, but they were good at sieging cities. The advisor asked, "Did the Duke of Zhengze not send reinforcements?" County Magistrate Xia was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. He couldn't help but complain, "Yang Tao's troops are short on horses and there are gaps everywhere. How can he care about Daifang? The letter has already been sent out. The earliest reinforcements will arrive in 7 or 8 days. How can we withstand the ravages of those animals?" Yang Tao also had his own difficulties, but County Magistrate Xia wouldn't understand. Instead, he was full of complaints. "Do you think Fu Wang and the others will really massacre the city?" Mu Xian said, "It's hard to say. Lu Shi is restrained by the Nie family, and most of his troops are trapped in the north. Fu Wang has led troops to attack Zhangzhou for a long time, but he hasn't achieved anything yet. If we use the massacre to intimidate everyone, Fu Wang will encounter fewer obstacles when he attacks Zhangzhou from the south." The people in Zhangzhou weren't of one mind. The gentry all had their own plans. If they saw that things weren't going well, they would easily jump ship. If they used the massacre to show their strength, they might really be able to scare the counties along the way into surrendering. County Magistrate Xia became even more flustered when he heard this. The advisor continued, "We can roughly tell whether the situation is favorable or not. This is especially true for the strength of the two feudal lords. Lu Shi's troops are strong, and the navy's combat power is also extraordinary. On the other hand, Yang Tao has spent too much of his troops in the alliance with Nansheng. How can he have the strength to deal with Lu Shi now? In my opinion, even if County Magistrate is doing this for the safety of the people in the city, you have to consider this letter of challenge carefully. No matter how sturdy the Daifang was, could it compare to the passes and cities that Jiang Pengji had previously pried open as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood? In terms of military strength, they only had 10% of the enemies. Not even the shadow of the reinforcements could be seen. They couldn't defend even if they wanted to. Instead of defending to the death and sacrificing the lives of all the people in the city, it was better to take the initiative to surrender to the enemy. Furthermore, Chapter 15-20. These conspiracy theories wronged Yang Tao. He wasn't a despicable person, and he wouldn't risk the war for the sake of personal revenge. The arrival of the reinforcements was normal, but the timing of Daifang's surrender was abnormal. Pfft! Yang Si was drinking tea to quench his thirst when he suddenly heard that Xia County Magistrate had secretly sent someone over to negotiate. He spat out a mouthful of tea, drenching Feng Zhen's sleeve. Feng Zhen almost jumped up from where he stood. His face was not only angry, but also full of disdain. Fu Wang saw that the two were about to start fighting again, so he smiled and stepped forward to separate them. Military foresight is amazing. That Daifang County Magistrate is indeed a cowardly, selfish person. Fu Wang smiled and flattered Fengzhen, calming his anger at Yang Xi's saliva on his sleeve. But Yang Xi wasn't easy to deal with either. They sent someone over to negotiate. They might not be surrendering. Perhaps they're just pretending to surrender. Fengzhen laughed coldly. If they had that kind of courage and unyielding character, Yang Jian wouldn't have died so tragically back then. The powers in Zhangzhou were far more complicated than outsiders could imagine. Landowning families stood in great numbers, and powerful people rose up together. Their interests had already reached a delicate balance. Who would have thought that Yang Jian would appear out of nowhere and break the balance? Some people were convinced by his heroism, but more people didn't like him. At the root of it all, it was because Yang Jian's unyielding attitude had affected the interests of Zhangzhou's landowning families. Rather than saying that Yang Jian had been poisoned by Zhao Shao, it was more accurate to say that he had died because of the landowning family's indifference. Yang Jian was dead. The hothead who had been eyeing their cake and destroying their interests was gone. Who knew how they would celebrate in secret? Yang Tao's personality wasn't as unyielding as Yang Jian's, and his methods weren't as forceful. That was why the backlash wasn't as severe. If Yang Tao's personality was the same as his father's, Yang Tao would have been plotted against a long time ago. This group of people was born to pursue benefits. They were willing to follow whoever could bring them a prosperous future and allow their families to continue to prosper. This rule didn't just apply to the landowning families of Zhangzhou. It applied to other people as well. When Yang Tao could bring them benefits, Yang Tao was their lord. When Yang Tao could not even protect himself, this group of people began to plan for themselves. Loyalty? What was that? Those who were truly proud and unyielding were often the ones who died the earliest and most tragic deaths. Those landowning households had lived longer than a 1,000-year-old tortoise. Which one of them wasn't an expert at seeking benefits and avoiding harm? In the face of the threat and pressure of the 80,000 troops, the county magistrate of Dangfang County had long been scared out of his wits. It was expected that he would surrender. Backbone? Hee, how much is that thing worth? Just as Fengzhen had expected, the Dangfang County magistrate had sent people over to surrender, and the messenger had been extremely flattering. Seeing this, Yang Xi could not be bothered to argue anymore. Otherwise, he would be slapped in the face by Fengzhen again. Zhangzhou was Fengzhen's hometown, his home ground. It would be great if the people we meet along the way were all so tactful. Although Fu Wang loved to fight, he also knew that people would die in battle. His old brothers had died one by one, and now, when he found someone to drink with, it was always a new face. It would be the best if they could conquer Zhangzhou without shedding any blood. Unfortunately, this was just a daydream. Yang Xi smiled and said, "General Fu, this isn't a good thing." Fu Wang asked him in surprise, "Why do you say that? Isn't it good for the enemy to surrender?" Yang Xi said, "There are many people who have surrendered. Can you tell which ones are sincere and which ones are pretending to surrender and are waiting for a good opportunity?" If the road was filled with people who had surrendered, Yang Xi would be so scared that he wouldn't be able to sleep. Fu Wang said, "What the military counselor said makes sense." County Magistrate Xia opened the city gates and surrendered without another word. He was very guilty, and so were the landowning households in the city. No one actually went to inform Yang Tao. When Yang Tao's reinforcements arrived nearby, he realized that something was wrong. He sent a few scouts disguised as refugees to scout for news. Not long after, the scouts returned. They told the general that there were no signs of a siege at the city gates, but the flag on the city walls had been changed to a flag with the surname Liu. The general who led the troops knew what had happened. He was furious and cut a withered tree at the side with his sword. These despicable people. Are they trying to kill us and then wag their tails at the new master to claim credit? The general was so angry that his chest rose and fell violently, but he couldn't care less about his anger now. He could only immediately turn around and leave with his troops. 80,000 elites were stationed in Dafang, and the level of land warfare of the soldiers under Jiang Pengji's command was well known. The general didn't want to fight against the elites with an exhausted army after a long journey. However, he was still a step too late. Fu Wang led the troops to cut off their retreat. The two armies had a scuffle in the suburbs outside Dafang city. After a fierce battle, the crows circling in the sky refused to leave for a long time. Broken limbs and wreckage were everywhere. The reinforcements sent by Yang Tao suffered heavy casualties. However, Fu Wang didn't manage to keep all of them. Nearly half of the remaining troops broke through the encirclement. It didn't take long for the news to reach Yang Tao's ears. When he understood the whole story, he was so angry that he smashed the table. I've never seen such a group of spineless cowards. The generals under his command were also furious. They wanted to rush to the county magistrate of Dafang and cut him into pieces. Yang Tao's eyes were bloodshot. He was so angry that his teeth were trembling. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of heartache. When he received the emergency report from Dafang, he immediately sent his elite troops to rush there day and night. Dafang city's walls were high and thick, so it wouldn't be a problem to defend for a day or two. Who would have thought that the county magistrate wouldn't even fart and would surrender without a word? Not only was this bastard afraid of death, but he also let countless good men die because of him. If he had no intention to fight and surrendered so easily, why did he have to call for help? The two armies hadn't even officially started fighting, but he was already siding with the enemy. How awesome! Yan Lin said, "Please calm down, my lord. There's no need to get angry over such despicable people." Yang Tao panted heavily. "I'm not doing it for these fickle people. I'm doing it for the soldiers who died for nothing." Yan Lin sighed in his heart. The county magistrate of Dafang is only siding with Lu Shi on the surface. I don't know how many people are secretly trying to get on her good side. The more anxious he was, the more disadvantageous it would be. Yan Lin said, "Have you heard of fence-sitters? Wherever the wind blows, the person will fall to the same side. What really determines their stand is not the scenery inside or outside the walls, but the wind." They surrendered to Lu Shi for the sake of their own interests and self-preservation. Naturally, they will show their loyalty to us for the same reason. My lord, why don't you play along and let Lu Shi have a taste of his own medicine? Once she's had a taste, she'll know that not all filthy and smelly trash can be put into her mouth. Some trash can taste bad at best, but some can choke to death. Yang Tao said, "Xiaoyang, you mean to send people to pretend to surrender?" Chapter 15:21. Yang Tao didn't understand. "What do you mean?" Yan Lin's eyes were cold as he said, "Lu Shi's advisor, Feng Zhen, is from Zhangzhou's Anshan County. He was born into an aristocratic family and is very familiar with the powers in Zhangzhou. He probably knows which families are willing to join him and which families are not. Therefore, if they wanted to set up a trap, Yan Lin couldn't choose Yang Tao's people. The trick of injuring oneself to gain sympathy depended on the target. It was useless against a heartless animal like Feng Zhen. He wouldn't trust him even if he killed him. "I have a good candidate." Yang Tao asked, "Who?" "The Zhao family. Zhao Xiao's Zhao family. Years ago, Zhao Xiao caused Yang Jian's death and brought his family to seek refuge with the fake emperor, Prince Changshou. Later, he followed Prince Chongsheng to Nansheng and secretly ran back to Dongqing. He even became Su Bei's guest minister. He was known as the best thief and was as sly as a mudfish. Yang Tao was also a man who could distinguish between kindness and hatred. He only wanted to kill the person who killed his father, so he didn't vent his anger on the Zhao family. However, Yang Tao didn't kill anyone, but the Zhao family didn't dare to relax. They were always on tenterhooks, afraid that Yang Tao would find them to settle old scores. If that happened, they wouldn't even be able to escape. The Zhao family was the happiest when Jiang Pengji called. It was no surprise that the Zhao family would defect to the enemy. Xiaoyang means to use them as candidates to fake their surrender? Are you sure this isn't digging their own graves? Yang Tao didn't kill the other members of the Zhao family, but he had been secretly suppressing them in recent years. When he was in a bad mood, he would vent his anger on them. From a fundamental point of view, the Zhao family and Yang Tao were going in opposite directions. There was no way the Zhao family would help Yang Tao complete his plan. It was already good enough that they didn't betray Yang Tao. Yan Lin nodded, then shook his head. For now, the Zhao family is the most suitable candidate. Feng Zhen and the others won't suspect them, Yan Lin said. Whether it's the Zhao family or the other gentry families, they all have to face an awkward problem when they grow bigger. The number of family members increases, and there are many conflicts between the branches. There are even examples of blood brothers turning against each other, not to mention a big family. It's impossible for everyone to be of one mind. Yang Si and the others had thought of feigning surrender, but they had never thought that Yang Tao would place his hopes on the Zhao clan. This sword move was unconventional, it was too unconventional. Yan Lin secretly sent people to detain the target's parents, wife, and children. Since the target was unwilling to do so, he had no choice but to do it. Since the county magistrates surrendered without even fighting, and the reinforcements sent by Yang Tao were intercepted by Fu Wang and his men, the morale of Zhangzhou's people plummeted. Fu Wang led his troops to advance southward with an unstoppable momentum. It only took him a month to reap a considerable harvest. Seeing that the situation was becoming clearer and clearer, the landowning households who had been hesitant immediately switched sides. Their secret letters were also sent more frequently, and the contents were no longer vague and ambiguous. Fu Wang sneered as he finished reading. He treasured the letters one by one. These were all for his lord to read. To put it nicely, these people were very sensible and had bet on the right person. To put it bluntly, he had no backbone and was useless. Yang Tao hadn't lost yet, but they were already singing the bad news and sending flirtatious glances to the enemy. How could his lord rest assured with people with such bad characters? For example, if his lord was unfortunately faced with a situation like Yang Tao's one day, would these despicable people jump out and kick her when she was down? Fu Wang sneered. They're not loyal once, but they'll never be loyal again. They still don't understand our lord's temperament. As the war unfolded, more and more landowning households changed sides. Some even brought their families over to seek refuge. The Zhao clan? Which Zhao clan? There were many landowning households with the same surname, and there were also a few landowning households with the surname Zhao in Zhangzhou. Yang Si glanced at it and smiled mysteriously. So it's this Zhao clan. Zhao Xiao was from the same landowning household. Yang Si even had an inexplicable ill-fated relationship with Zhao Xiao. Back then, Zhao Xiao mocked Yang Si at the Hongmen banquet for being the son of a prostitute. Yang Si immediately retorted, but he was still angry when he returned. When it came to holding a grudge, Yang Si ranked in the top 3. Not long after, his lord brought people to attack the Barbican city. Yang Si secretly concealed Zhao Xiao's whereabouts. He watched as Zhao Xiao was tortured by a few refugees until he was physically and mentally exhausted and couldn't close the door properly. Then, he personally witnessed Zhao Xiao being punished with a wooden basin. Only then did he satisfactorily write off this grudge. Because of Zhao Xiao, Yang Si didn't have a good impression of the Zhao clan. Feng Zhen said, "The Zhao clan has been living in fear all these years. I'm afraid they haven't been doing well." Yang Si laughed. It'd be strange if they were doing well, right? Zhao Xiao is Yang Tao's enemy who killed his father. Now that the Zhao clan is under Yang Tao's control, they have no choice but to tuck their tails between their legs. Now that we're leading troops to attack Zhangzhou, the Zhao clan will probably be overjoyed. Look, they're hurriedly flying over. The Zhao clan was sincerely seeking refuge. Not only did they offer a lot of their family's savings, but they also gave a proof of allegiance. This proof of allegiance was the Great Universal Geographical Map of several main river basins in Zhangzhou. It also marked the distribution of Yang Tao's troops. This is really generous, but, does the military advisor think it's trustworthy? Fu Wang first saw the information, but then he became suspicious. He was a little stunned that such a big pie had fallen from the sky. Yang Si asked Fengzhen, is the relationship between the Zhao clan and Yang Tao really like fire and water? Fengzhen said, Yang Tao often oppresses the Zhao clan. How good do you think their relationship is? If that's the case, this great universal geographical map is real? Fengzhen frowned. The Zhao clan's allegiance is real, but the great universal geographical map needs to be discussed. General, why don't you send someone to test them again? The results of the test were that there were no problems. Not everyone could have the great universal geographical map. Otherwise, how could it be called a military secret? If they used it as a proof of allegiance, the Zhao clan's future would be promising. Why would they present a fake map and put themselves in a difficult position? Fengzhen said, Yang Tao doesn't tolerate the Zhao clan. If they offend the Lord again, how can they have a foothold? I'm afraid they'll want to die. After confirming the authenticity of the Great Universal Geographical Map, the wariness in everyone's hearts disappeared. They had previously drawn a map of the waters surrounding Zhangzhou after clearing out the bandits, but the mountains and rivers within the borders were still unclear. With the help of this Great Universal Geographical Map, the difficulty of taking down Zhangzhou would be greatly reduced. Fu Wang was in a good mood. Maybe we can take down Zhangzhou before the Lord forces the Nia clan to retreat. Little did they know that this was just a trap set up by Yan Lin. Most of the Great Universal Geographical Map was real. Only the small details were fake, but it was these details that were enough to affect the direction of the entire battle. Yang Tao asked his friend. Has Xiaoyang been unhappy with the Zhao clan for a long time? Yan Lin asked with his eyes. Yang Tao said, once we lose the battle, Fu Wang and the others will find out that the Great Universal Geographical Map is fake. The Zhao clan, who presented the Great Universal Geographical Map, will probably have to bear the full responsibility. Regardless of whether the Zhao clan really betrayed them or not, they would still end up with their heads broken. Chapter 1522. Yang Tao smiled. If that's the case, the Zhaos won't be able to explain themselves no matter how many times they open their mouths. Why bother? Even though he had killed his father, Yang Tao hadn't done anything to the Zhaos over the years. At most, he had suppressed them a little so that they wouldn't be able to rise again. The Zhao's status in Zhangzhou wasn't as high as it used to be, but at least they didn't have to worry about their lives. Now, in order to seek a better future, the Zhao family betrayed one side and sided with the other when the Willow family and the Willow family were at war. They used the war as a capital to climb the ladder to heaven and advance. Were they not afraid of climbing too high and falling from the sky, turning into meat paste? If they were unhappy with Yang Tao, they should have waited until he was defeated before throwing themselves at the enemy. To put it bluntly, their impatience was due to greed. How could the icing on the cake compare to providing timely help? Yan Lin looked down and sneered. Everyone has their own fate. If the Zhaos are destroyed, they have only themselves to blame. In troubled times, it was wrong not to pick a side, but it was also wrong to pick the wrong side. The Zhaos could only blame themselves for being short-sighted and unlucky. Whether it was Jiang Pengji or the other nobles, they all hated fickle and treacherous people from the bottom of their hearts. Yan Lin had used Jiang Pengji's hands to kill the Zhaos. That was the end they deserved. Yang Tao and Yan Lin watched the Zhao's fate coldly, but the Zhaos didn't think so. Once Yang Tao is destroyed, we can finally put down the knife on our necks. Ever since Yang Tao had risen again, the Zhaos had been trembling with fear, afraid that he would kill them one day. Now that they sided with Jiang Pengji and presented the universal geographical map, they still had to worry about the future of the Zhaos. When the rewards were given after the war, the Zhaos would also be ranked. They might not be able to cover the sky with one hand in Zhangzhou, but they would at least be a big shot. Yang Tao has a strong foundation in Zhangzhou. The troops under his command are the elite navy left by Yang Jian. Leader, do you think they? The advisor looked worried and said, Lu Shi's troops are strong, but fighting on land and on water can't be compared. Don't worry about that. The leader of the Zhao clan was very confident in Jiang Pengji. According to the spies that Zhao family had planted in the water stockade and then incorporated into the army, the navy under Jiang Pengji's command was in good spirits. One could not tell that they were cowardly in the face of the great river in the north. If it was a water battle, even if their combat strength was inferior to Yang Tao's, they could still win by relying on numbers. Now that they had presented the great universal geographical map, their chances of winning had increased by at least 30%. Zhao Shi and the others were happily dreaming, unaware that a disaster had already descended. A few days later, a few pieces of bad news reached Feng Zhen and the others. After Feng Zhen and Yang Si had a discussion, they decided to send 30,000 naval troops in 3 different directions. They would go downstream and attack 3 key locations in Zhangzhou. They were going to catch the enemy off guard. Unexpectedly, the report of victory did not come back. Instead, it was news that the navy had been ambushed by the enemy, and the casualties were unclear. Enemy surprise attack? Feng Zhen's hand trembled, and the brush in his hand fell onto the table. The ink stained the table black. He quickly walked to the sand table and glanced at the place where his army had been ambushed. No matter how he analyzed it, there could not be an ambush in the waters. The waters were wide and the field of vision was clear. Where would the enemy have come from to ambush them? Could it be that they had grown wings and descended from the sky? But their battle report could not be wrong. Then, this meant that there was a problem with their intelligence. A possibility popped up in his mind. The veins on his forehead bulged with his anger. Quickly tell me the details. Feng Zhen pinched the corner of the sand table with one hand. His fingers turned white from using too much force. The messenger saw that Feng Zhen was really angry and did not dare to delay. He spoke twice as fast. Feng Zhen stared at the great universal geographical map that Zhao Shi had presented. 2 clusters of flames ignited in his eyes, as if he wanted to burn a hole in the map. Send reinforcements. If they can make it in time, order the vanguard navy to turn back. This was the disadvantage of outdated communication. If they could communicate in real time, the vanguard navy could send news back when they realized something was wrong. Then, Feng Zhen could order adjustments to the battle order to reduce unnecessary casualties and losses. It was too late to order reinforcements and retreat now. Report: the first messenger had just left when another soldier came running with an urgent report from the front lines. Feng Zhen had already expected this. He ordered people to take Zhao Shi into custody and had the messenger read out the urgent report. There were many waters in Zhangzhou. Some of the waters looked very calm, but under the water, there were undercurrents and reefs everywhere. If the navy at the helm was not careful, it could easily cause the ship to hit the reefs and sink. Once in the water, how could they fight? The navy was quite alert. When they realized that something was wrong underwater, they immediately sent people back to report. But they did not dare to delay military orders, so they chose a compromise. They had the army stop for half a day and sent dozens of soldiers on small boats to check out the situation in the waters. After investigating for an hour, they suddenly realized that the waters were very dangerous. The small boats were fine, but the battleships that could carry hundreds of people had a deep draft. If they sailed over, they would most likely hit the reefs and sink. The commander of the navy discovered the problem and immediately realized that the intelligence given by his superiors was wrong. There was something fishy going on, so he hurriedly prepared to return. The other navy had bad luck. They ran into the enemy's main force, which was waiting for them. The battle was extremely fierce. Feng Zhen was not the only one who was angry. Yan Lin and the others did not look happy either. The tent was quiet. No one dared to even breathe. They could not help but look at the culprit. Yan Lin was sitting on the right side of Yang Tao. The bamboo report in his hand had been crushed by him. He did not even feel the thorns piercing into his skin. Yang Tao and Yan Lin had grown up together. He knew what it was like to be angry, so he secretly shivered. Xiaoyang, this battle is not without gains. Yang Tao wanted to plead for his generals, but his friend's aura was too oppressive. The more he spoke, the weaker he became. He only dared to speak in a low voice. According to Yan Lin's plan, they would definitely take down Jiang Pengji's 30,000 navy and make them all ghosts on the river. When it came to actual action, the result was far less than expected. Not only was the enemy's operation beyond their expectations, but the ability of their own generals was also disappointing. As mentioned earlier, Feng Zhen planned to take advantage of the upper class. He sent the elites of the three armies downstream to attack the target as fast as possible. There were 3 groups of elites, but only 2 of them actually fought. The third group of enemies realized that something was wrong and planned to retreat. What made Yan Lin's heart ache was that the ambushing troops did not move at all. They did not try to stop the enemy. They just watched as the enemy retreated. Were they pigs? Who was the leader of the ambushing troops? Yan Lin glanced at the name. Not only was his heart aching, but his head was also hurting. Chapter 15:23. He was supposed to spend the rest of his life at home, but because of his disappointing children, he had to put on his armor again for the sake of his descendants. He begged Yang Tao to give him a chance to fight. Yang Tao was a sentimental man. The old man was not only Yang Jian's martial arts master when he was young, but he had also protected Yang Jian from many fatal wounds. He had been at his beck and call for more than 20 years. Yang Tao couldn't refuse, so he agreed. It was a pity that the old man was too old. He often acted like an old man and used his old friendship with Yang Jian to pressure people. Yang Tao had a good temper, so he didn't take it to heart. The old man loved to drink when he was young, but he knew his limits and didn't dare to break military discipline. Yang Tao knew this. He didn't think it was a big deal that the old man liked to drink, as long as he could control his liquor at critical moments. But now, things were different. Perhaps it was because he had been living at home for a few years that his temper had become arrogant. He was stupid and willful. It was such an important setup, but not only did he not raise his guard, he even got drunk in front of the formation. After the enemy took the initiative to retreat, the group of soldiers looked at each other in confusion. They did not know what to do and did not dare to act on their own without the general's order. The vice commander could only call for the old man. In the end, he got angry and splashed a bucket of water on the old man to wake him up. It was too late. They chased after the enemy, but the enemy's warships were already far away. They couldn't catch up. Therefore, other than a few warships that sank at the beginning, they didn't suffer any other losses. The other 2 groups of navy were ambushed along the way and were caught unprepared. They encountered battles along the way and the enemy outnumbered them by a factor of 2. The two groups of navy lost more than 10,000 warships and hundreds of warships. It wasn't a bad result, but everyone could see that according to Yan Lin's calculations, the enemy's losses were even greater. If they had performed well, they could have wiped out 20,000 of the enemy's navy. But they let 10,000 of them escape. What a joke! Opportunities on the battlefield were fleeting. If they missed this opportunity, they didn't know when they would get another. Yan Lin wasn't the kind of person to lose his temper, nor would he blame an innocent general. He calmed down and asked about the situation at the front. After a while, he noticed a fatal problem. Whether it was the ambushed group or the ones that were engaged in head-on battles, the enemy had to rely on brute force to break through. Those who dared to fight in the water so recklessly could only rely on one thing: warships. The result of the investigation was as Yan Lin had expected. The enemy's warship was indeed unique. When the two ships collided, the enemy's ship didn't shake much, but Yan Lin's ship reacted violently. If there were a few more collisions, the enemy's warship would still be able to hold on, but their own warship would already be damaged and flooded. Everyone listened to this analysis, and the previous information surfaced in their minds. Mountain Ghost grants shipbuilding divine art. They looked at each other in dismay, silently communicating with their eyes. Aren't they all fake? Someone finally broke the silence. How can there be mountain ghosts in this world? They were in awe of ghosts and gods, but that didn't mean they believed in their existence. There are no mountain ghosts, but the warships they built do have an advantage in water battles. Because of the sturdiness of the warship, it was able to break through their blockade and ambush by brute force. It could only watch helplessly as half of the fatty meat flew away. This battle could not be said to be a great victory. In order to kill more than 10,000 enemies, they had also paid the price of warships and casualties. Even though it wasn't as tragic as Jiang Pengji's, Yang Tao didn't have much money at the moment. He didn't have many supplies, so he would feel the pain if he lost more. Someone couldn't help but mutter, "Look at their warships." I wonder when Lu Shi started plotting against Zhangzhou, Yan Lin sneered. When? When she was just a county magistrate. Who would have thought that Qi Kuang, whom Jiang Pengji borrowed during the alliance meeting at Huangshui, would help her train such a tough navy? He shouldn't have let her borrow him back then. Thinking of this, Yan Lin resisted the urge to get even with his friends. Jiang Pengji wanted to borrow Qi Kuang, but Yang Tao had foolishly agreed. Who would have thought that they would raise a tiger in their bosom? After everyone left, Qian Su secretly gave a letter of information to Yang Tao. Yan Lin was beside him. What's this? Qian Su said, the news came back 2 days ago. Lu Shi has put a lot of pressure on the Nie family. Yang Tao opened it curiously and frowned. After reading it, he passed it to his friend, Yan Lin. Bullsh *T. Yan Lin said, how dare they send back such absurd news? The letter said that hundreds of arrows were stopped in mid-air by the golden light and couldn't hurt Jiang Pengji. Yang Tao said, fortunately, this news didn't spread. Otherwise, it would prove that Mountain Ghost helped Lu Shi. Qian Su said, it was also because of this concern that I secretly hid this letter of intelligence. If Lu Shi is truly blessed by the heavens, this battle will be hard to win. The Nie family has such a strong military force and Nie Liang is so ruthless, but they were defeated by Lu Shi. This is a ready-made example. Because there were many illiterates, there were also many ignorant people. They were the easiest people to provoke and deceive. Yan Lin said, I don't think we can hide it for long. Fortunately, our army has just won a small battle. It should be able to eliminate the influence of the rumors. If he was blessed by the heavens, how could he lose to a mortal? Qian Su also laughed. This battle came in time. Otherwise, our army would be very passive. Yan Lin couldn't laugh. He was in charge of the entire army and knew the current situation of his army. After all, the battle at Nansheng had consumed too much energy. Before they could recover, they had to fight Jiangpengji again. They were weak. This news couldn't be spread to prevent the stability of the army from being affected. Yang Tao's camp was half happy and half worried. Feng Zhen's camp was full of thunder and lightning. It looked like a fellow cultivator had passed the tribulation and ascended. The people of the Zhao family were detained. The leader of the Zhao family, who had presented the universal geographical map, was brought to the front of the crowd. The leader looked confused. You presented a fake map and killed tens of thousands of my soldiers. You deserve to die, you villain. Fu Wang gritted his teeth. He unsheathed his sword and placed it across the leader's neck, drawing a thin red line. The leader of the Zhao family was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly said, "General, what do you mean? Why are you accusing me?" Feng Zhen threw the universal geographical map on the leader's face. His expression was extremely cold. "This is the map you presented." When had the leader of the Zhao family ever been humiliated like this? However, with the enemy's sword on his neck, he could only swallow his anger for the sake of his life. He opened the universal geographical map with trembling hands and looked at it carefully. This is indeed the universal geographical map I presented. The map is fake, Yang Si sneered. Yang Si sneered and said, "TSK, you colluded with Yang Tao to use fake pictures to harm people. What a loyal dog." The Zhao family and Yang Tao hated each other so much. How could they let bygones be bygones? Chapter 1524. Fake, fake? How could the universal geographical map be fake? Someone must be trying to frame us. The Zhao clan leader's heart skipped a beat. All the blood drained from his face, leaving behind a frighteningly pale face. His eyes were as big as goldfish. He wasn't stupid. He knew what would happen to the Zhao clan if the universal geographical map was fake. Extermination would be considered a light punishment. Feng Zhen only smiled coldly. Fu Wang's eyes were full of murderous intent, and the Zhao clan leader didn't dare look him in the eye. He was so flustered that he didn't know where to put his hands. He could only seize the opportunity to defend himself. Yang Tao has suppressed the Zhao clan many times. Because of his power, we could only swallow our anger and give in again and again. We've been looking forward to it for a long time, and finally, the Duke of Lanting has graced us with his presence. The entire Zhao clan is overjoyed. We've finally escaped from the tiger's mouth. Why would we help Yang Tao? Yang Si asked him, "The universal geographical map was presented by you, wasn't it?" The Zhao clan leader nodded with some hesitation. "Yes. This fake universal geographical map caused our deployment to go wrong. We fell into the enemy's trap and lost tens of thousands of elite soldiers, wasn't it? The universal geographical map must have been replaced. The map presented by the Zhao clan is definitely not a problem." The Zhao clan leader felt even more hopeless after hearing this. He stammered, "The Zhao clan is truly loyal to Duke Lanting. I hope that the general and the military counselor will investigate carefully and prove our innocence." Yang Si smiled coldly. The fake map was presented by the Zhao clan. Of course, you have to bear the responsibility. Even if the universal geographical map was really replaced, you have failed in your duties. The lives of your entire clan won't be enough. When the Zhao clan leader heard this, he immediately understood Yang Si's plan. His heart went cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. "Why are you talking so much nonsense with him, military counselor? Lock up all his clansmen and investigate them one by one." Fu Wang had never been a good-tempered person. They had lost tens of thousands of sailors in one go. If his lord investigated, he would take the blame. Just thinking about it made him grit his teeth in hatred. He couldn't help but twist the Zhao clan leader's head off with his bare hands. If it's a fake surrender, they'll all be turned to dust. No matter how much the leader of the Zhao clan cried out, he couldn't change the fate of his entire clan being imprisoned. After careful investigation, Feng Zhen and the others had locked onto a certain member of the Zhao clan as a suspect. On the eve of the incident, the man had packed his belongings and was ready to escape. However, his luck was a little bad. Halfway through his escape, he was stopped by his pursuers at a certain pier and was tied up and brought back. Although this person was from a branch family, he was doing quite well. He was usually dressed in gold and silver, so when had he ever been treated like this? Tell me the truth, and I might leave you with a whole corpse. Feng Zhen had been too confident. He had played with eagles all his life, but he had almost been pecked blind by an eagle. This time, he had lost tens of thousands of elite sailors. It was a painful lesson, but it wasn't to the point where his bones were broken. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to absolve himself of the blame even if he died 10,000 times. Why did you capture me? Then why did you pack your bags and flee? Feng Zhen countered. The Zhao clan has been implicated because of you, and their extinction is imminent. As a member of the Zhao clan, you will naturally share blessings and misfortunes, and follow them to the Yellow Springs. Tell me, why did I capture you? The man's hands were tied behind his back with hemp rope. He knelt on the ground, his head drooping to his chest, not daring to raise his head. What, you have nothing to say? Feng Zhen laughed coldly and confidently. Did you swap this fake Great Universal Geographical Map? The man's body trembled faintly, and his Adam's apple squirmed as he swallowed. Feng Zhen continued, your parents, wife, and child. You said they were ambushed and killed by the pirates, but in reality, they were detained by Yang Tao, weren't they? Since you already know, why bother asking? The man saw that Feng Zhen had even guessed this, so he simply threw caution to the wind and admitted to all his crimes. This was all my doing. I will take responsibility for my actions alone, and it has nothing to do with the clan. Feng Zhen laughed. He didn't know whether to call the man stupid or smart. You say this to absolve the clan, but do you think it's possible? The man countered. What, is the Duke of Lanting someone who can't tell right from wrong, and would actually implicate the entire clan for one person's crimes? He insisted that he was the one who did it. If Jiang Pengji held the entire clan responsible, wouldn't that be killing the innocent? However, Feng Zhen wasn't a simple person. How could he let the man beat around the bush with just a few words? If I can kill the entire clan to prevent this from happening again, why not? Feng Zhen laughed coldly. The Zhao family clearly had the intention of rebelling, but they pushed all the blame onto you. Did they really think that they could escape the fate of extinction by doing so? In their dreams. After hearing this, the man's expression revealed his disbelief. Your wife, child, and parents are in Yang Tao's hands, right? Feng Zhen raised his hand and pinched the man's chin, forcing him to look up at him. His seemingly thin hand was extremely strong, and he easily left several purple fingerprints on the man's face. Remember to walk slowly on the road to the underworld, and wait for them. What do you mean? What do I mean? The day we conquer Zhangzhou and capture Yang Tao is the day your family goes to the underworld to find you. Feng Zhen suppressed the urge to strangle the man and laughed coldly. If we don't make the entire Zhao family pay with their lives, how will the tens of thousands of souls who drowned in the river rest in peace? Casualties were inevitable in a battle between two armies, but the deaths had to be worthwhile. Feng Zhen wouldn't blame Yan Lin, who came up with this evil plan, because this was a normal battle between two armies. Conspiracies and overt plots were normal. You could plot against others, and others could plot against you. It was just a matter of who was more skilled. However, he couldn't tolerate the villains involved. The Zhao family brought their entire clan to seek refuge, but they presented the fake map. They deserved to die. Because they had lost a battle, Yang Tao's side was full of vigor. The gentry who had been throwing flirtatious glances at Jiang Pengji didn't make a move again. The secret report Jiang Pengji received was about the Zhao family. These gentry in Zhangzhou. Are they all itching for a beating? The more he looked, the angrier he became, especially when he saw the number of casualties on his side. His heart burned with anger. Do they really think the feudal lords are like radishes and cabbages in the market that they can pick and choose? Yang Tao was weak, so the gentry in Zhangzhou kept throwing flirtatious glances at Jiang Pengji. Their attitudes were ambiguous. Yang Tao had won a great victory, so the gentry's stance changed again. The gentry who had pledged their allegiance to Jiang Pengji were also restless. When had she ever been so picky? Did they really think Jiang Pengji was easy to talk to? Regarding the Zhao family, Jiang Pengji had the same thoughts as Feng Zhen and the others. If she allowed this incident to set a precedent, the gentry who pledged their allegiance to her in the future would pull out some petty tricks and drag one of their clansmen out to take the blame. Her prestige and reputation as a feudal lord would be swept away. How could she defend herself? Qiguan Rang said, "This is what Yang Tao wanted." Indeed, Yang Tao had taken Jiang Pengji's sword and killed the entire Zhao family. He had avenged his father's last bit, and his reputation hadn't been damaged. Chapter 1525. Jiang Pengji knew that Yang Tao would clap his hands and celebrate if she killed Zhao Shi, but she still wanted to kill her. She wanted to use this move to make the aristocrats of Zhangzhou think about it carefully. She also wanted them to understand that the fight for the feudal lords of the world was not something they could pick and choose at will. They could jump ship, but they had to know their place. If they dared to be disloyal, then they couldn't blame the god-slaying sword in her hand. I hate betrayal the most. She was actually very easy to talk to as long as they didn't cross her line. Once he stepped on it, there would be nothing left to say. Apart from that, there was also the punishment for Feng Zhen's mistake. She planned to settle the score after the war. Yan Lin is not to be underestimated, but Feng Zishe really underestimated him. Qiguan Rang and Wei Ci walked out and talked about what had happened in a low voice. Everyone could tell that Jiang Pengji wanted to give Feng Zhen a chance. She didn't want to punish him severely. Of course, she couldn't punish him severely because Feng Zhen wasn't the only one to blame. I agree with the first part, but I disagree with the second part. Wei Ci smiled. Yan Lin helped the reckless Yang Tao get to where he is today. He must have some skills. It's not right to say that Zishe underestimated him. If Wenjing was Zishe, would you have fallen into his trap? Wei Ci knew that Qiguan Rang's temperament was very similar to his lord's. They didn't use people they didn't trust. No matter how one looked at it, it was reasonable for Zhao Shi to surrender. No one would believe that Zhao Shi, who had a grudge against Yang Tao, would help Yang Tao set someone up. Therefore, after accepting Zhao Shi, even if he had doubts about the universal geographical map, he had to use it. As long as he used the map, Yan Lin's plan would be half successful. The other half would depend on the outcome of the battle. Based on the fake map, Yan Lin had predicted the enemy's layout in advance. He had chosen the right 3 ambushes. It showed how difficult Yan Lin was to deal with. Even with Wei Ci's experience from his previous life, he wouldn't be able to win against Yan Lin. Qiguan Rang frowned and said gloomily, "It's hard to say. I'll most likely fall into his trap." Yan Lin's plan was not something that could be avoided by a cautious and suspicious person. Wei Ci was not surprised by Qiguan Rang's answer. Based on what happened in her past life, Qiguan Rang was the one who fought Yan Lin, not Feng Zhen. He even suffered a few losses at Yan Lin's hands. Although they won the battle, it was not an easy victory. If Qiguan Rang had not lured Yang Tao into the trap of capturing Yen Lin, Ong Tao, who was as tough as a cockroach, would still have been alive and kicking for months. The two armies would have suffered even more losses. Of course, it wasn't that Qiguan Rang was worse than Yen Lin. Even though Qiguan Rang's ascension to the top of the scholar roll of the Golden Scale Pavilion in his previous life was partly due to political factors, it was mostly due to his personal strength. Scholars all had their own specialties. It would be difficult to compete with each other. Yen Lin had the home advantage. Whether it was Qiguan Rang or Fengzhen, it was expected that they would suffer losses at his hands. The only difference was whether the losses were greater or lesser. Tao was Yen Si. Were to kill 10,000 elite navy soldiers were Yan's Yu. Yang said. To say. Yang said Yang. Yang S Wei Yang's Yang Wei Ci didn't know much about the war because he hadn't experienced it himself. He only knew about the armaments and casualties of the two armies. This is a long war. Winning or losing doesn't mean anything. Wei Ci smiled. Wenzheng, you have some confidence in Zisher. He may not be serious, but he's reliable at critical moments. Qiguan Rang snorted coldly, declining to comment. Hey, isn't that Dalong from the Feng family? Why are you standing there in a daze? With his sharp eyes, Wei Ci saw Feng Yi standing outside his tent waiting for someone and called out to her with a smile. Feng Yi bowed to Wei Ci and Qiguan Rang. Greetings, uncles. Wei Ci lifted the curtain and smiled. It's still hot outside. Come in and have a seat. Feng Yi nodded. Qiguan Rang asked, Are you here about your father? Feng Yi said, Yes. I'm feeling uneasy. After hesitating for a long time, I decided to come and see what you're up to. You're very honest. If it was your father, he'd probably try to deceive you. Qiguan Rang's usually stiff face revealed an unnatural smile. You don't have to worry about this. My lord doesn't mean to punish me. When your father returns in triumph, I'll make amends for my mistakes. With uncle's words, I'm relieved. Feng Yi heaved a sigh of relief and immediately revealed an embarrassed blush. He explained in a slightly awkward manner, Just now, I received a letter from my mother. I was just worried that if this matter reached home, she would be worried, so that was the case. Wei Ci was amused. No wonder the steady Feng Yi would come to see what he was up to. Seeing Feng Yi leave, Qiguan Rang said, Although they're mother and son, they have a good relationship. I really don't know how this Feng Lingzi did it. He's useless and unsteady, but his wife is smart and capable. His son is also a good seedling. It's enviable. Wei Ci said sourly, maybe he'll have better seedlings in the future. Feng Yu, he should have eliminated this child when he was selecting the study companions of the crown prince. Why was the pig in Feng Zhen's house eyeing the good cabbages in other people's courtyards? Qiguan Rang asked faintly, Can Feng Lingzi still make it? Feng Zhen drank alcohol and took hanshi powder. Although he quit under the Lord's tyranny, could his seed still survive? Wei Ci revealed an indescribable expression. What was the point of asking him if Feng Zhen could make it? However, he really did know. This was a pain in the ass. Wei Ci didn't struggle for too long. Soon, he was called away by the messenger who ran over. My lord is busy. Qiguan Rang revealed a complicated expression after hearing this. He stretched out his hand towards Wei Ci, indicating that he should go. He didn't need to be called. The messenger said again, My lord has summoned both military counselors. Qiguan Rang responded with an, Oh. There was no awkwardness on his expressionless face. He smoothed out the folds of his sleeves. The two of them went to the commander's tent together. What's going on now? Qiguan Rang was curious. Wei Si didn't know either. He only said, "You'll know when you get there." Just like the two of them, everyone returned to their respective tents. They hadn't even sat down when they were called over by their lord. They came a few times a day. Their legs were so thin that they could walk. The Nia army seems to have the intention of withdrawing. Everyone had just arrived when Jiang Pengji said such a sentence. Everyone was collectively dumbfounded. Withdrawing? The Nia army? It couldn't be. They refused to withdraw even when Nia Liang knelt down. Why would they withdraw now? Wei Si frowned and said, "Could it be that there's a problem at the rear?" Wei Si had also heard of the trivial matters of the Nia family. When Nia Liang was still alive, they still knew to be cautious. Now that Nia Liang was dying of illness and Nia Qing was in a hurry to take over, how would Nia Liang's uncles be willing to see a grandson defecate on their heads? Chapter 15:26. Everyone looked at each other and fell into deep thought. Qiguan Rang asked, "Apart from that, did the Nia army make any other moves?" Jiang Pengji said, "I just received intelligence from the scouts at the front line that the Nia army is indeed slowly withdrawing. The defense is extremely tight. If the scouts weren't capable and the horses weren't fast, I'm afraid they wouldn't have made it back. We sent out 5 teams of scouts today, but only 4 returned. As a mobile unit to investigate the enemy's situation and counter reconnaissance, the importance of the scouts was undeniable." The scouts under Jiang Pengji's tent were special forces who had undergone special training. Many reconnaissance and counter-reconnaissance techniques were taught by Jiang Pengji in a booklet. Scouting the terrain, drinking water, and even drawing topographical maps were not a problem. Their mastery of combat belonged to the group of people at the peak of the military camp. To facilitate the scouts' work, Jiang Pengji equipped them with horses of the northern borderline. The harness was also specially made. Not only were they fast, but they also had strong endurance and explosive power. They had an advantage in mobility. They could escape immediately if they encountered a large group of enemies and save their lives. Under such circumstances, the scouts suffered such heavy casualties. It could only mean one thing: the enemy was secretly making a big move. Qiguan Rang asked again, "Is there any news from Zhongzhou?" Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, "The two places are far apart. By the time the news arrives, the Nia army would have withdrawn long ago." Once again, she could not help but complain about the backward means of communication in this world. At the same time, she missed the technology that allowed people to communicate across galaxies in her previous life. Indeed, technology changed life and the form of war. If she was given a mecha now, she could ascend to the throne in a short while. Under the circumstances of insufficient information, they could only use limited clues to determine the true situation of the enemy. Sun Wen frowned and said, "Nia Liang was quite capable. He could suppress a few uncles in the Nia family when he was alive. However, his death was too sudden. He didn't have time to give instructions." A group of old officials hastily pushed Nia Liang's son, Nia Qing, to the throne. "Nia Qing is gentle and kind. I'm afraid he won't be able to suppress the demons and monsters of the Nia family. Nia Qing only has a few thousand troops with him. If there's a mutiny in the Nia family..." What Sun Wen said was exactly what Wei Si and Qiguan Rang were thinking. Nia Liang died suddenly. There was no time to pave the way for his son, Nia Qing, to pave the way for his son. If there was a mutiny in the Nia family to seize power and Nia Qing was in danger, it would not be difficult to explain Wei Si's anxiousness and retreat secretly. However, was that really the case? Jiang Pengji knitted her brows tightly, as if she was going through a difficult decision. The salted fishes also learned to think. After thinking about it, they still chose to cheer for Wei Si and the rest. Xing Yuan Miao Miao, salted fish doesn't need to use his brain to watch the live stream. He just needs to learn how to cheer for the military counselor. Shui Yuexiang, from the current clues, it seems that there is something wrong with the Nie family. The streamer can't just let the tiger return to the mountain and let Wei Dan and the others retreat, right? If they left, then so be it. If they turned around and went back to pacify the situation in the country, then the host's battle would have been in vain. Adhering to the principle of take your life while you're down, the streamer should send troops to chase after the Nie clan's army so that they can't take care of both the front and the back. More than 200,000 troops were held back by Jiang Pengji. Nie Qing died in the Nie family's internal strife without any support. This plot was simply wonderful. I'm not a bar spirit, no, I don't think it's that simple. What if this was a trap to lure the tiger away from the mountain? The host had sent troops out of the pass to chase after the enemy, but the enemy had taken a detour to attack Zhangjiang Pass. If so, wouldn't the streamer be in a passive position? I'm not a bar spirit, however, according to the current clues, it's obvious that the Nie clan is in internal strife and Nie Qing is in danger. Is the streamer going to miss this opportunity and watch the enemy swagger away? Letting the tiger return to the mountain will cause endless trouble in the future. Nie Liang led more than 200,000 troops to fight the war. Jiang Pengji led troops to guard the pass. How much manpower, material, and financial resources did she expend? If the enemy left just like that, they would come back every few days for a stroll. Wouldn't the streamer's finances collapse? Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and didn't look at the bullet screen. She was deep in thought. After a while, she heard hurried footsteps coming from outside the tent. Report, the enemy has sent a letter of challenge. They've asked us to fight in 3 days. The messenger handed the letter of challenge that Wei Dan had personally written to Wei Ci, who then passed it to Jiang Pengji. She opened the tactical manual and took a look. Her right eyebrow was raised and there seemed to be a flash of light in her eyes. Regardless of whether it was the emperor in the previous life or the lord in this life, this expression meant one thing: she was angry. You're really petty. You wrote a letter of challenge and you don't forget to curse. Are you trying to bully me because I'm illiterate? Jiang Pengji muttered and resisted the urge to crumple the letter of challenge into a ball. Did I kill Wei Zishuan's wife or dig up his family's ancestral grave? At most, she angered Wei Dan's lord to death and abducted his younger brother. It wasn't a big grudge. Was there a need to curse so fiercely? Wei Ci knew what was written in the letter of challenge. His elder brother usually looked gentle, elegant, dignified, and polite, but he was quite vicious in his cursing. He remembered that in the previous life, he had written an elegy in front of Nie Liang's morning hall. The first half of the elegy praised Nie Liang to the heavens. In the second half, he mocked and insulted the villain who poisoned him. He cursed the person who poisoned him from head to toe, from his parents to his deceased ancestors. Wei Ci didn't know who poisoned him, but he later heard that Nie Liang's 2 uncles had fainted in front of the morning hall. Qiguan Rang took a look at the contents of the letter of challenge. There weren't many real words of challenge. The rest were sarcastic greetings. Of course, the words of a scholar wouldn't be so vulgar, not to mention that this was a letter of challenge. But it was infuriating enough. Qiguan Rang said calmly, "He's just someone who likes to flaunt his eloquence. My lord, you don't have to be angry with him." Jiang Pengji said, "How am I such a petty person?" No matter how harsh a scholar's cursing was, it was just that. When Jiang Pengji had just started streaming, the insults from the haters in the streaming room were spectacular. She could even ignore the vulgar insults that carried the organs of her parents and ancestors, not to mention those of Wei Dan's level. In comparison, she was more concerned about Wei Dan's purpose of challenging her. The scout had just sent the news back and Wei Dan had written a letter of challenge. No one would believe that he didn't have any ulterior motives. Everyone was obviously thinking the same thing as Jiang Pengji. Was Wei Dan's letter of challenge an invitation, or was he trying to cover it up? Jiang Pengji tapped her fingers on the brand new bronze table. She frowned slightly. The previous table had been destroyed and melted down by her merciless abuse. Qin Gong said, "This lowly general is willing to fight." Zhanjiang Pass wasn't the Nia family's backyard. She could come and go as she pleased. She had to catch up with him and beat him up. Chapter 1527. There is no movement from Lu Shi's side. Did he see through our plan? Fan Chen was very panicked, but Wei Yong was not in a hurry. He could only suppress his anxiety. How did she see through it? Wei Yong's eyebrows did not even rise as he sneered. Other than a few trusted generals who participated in the battle, no one else knows about this. They all think that the Nia family is in chaos and the young master is in trouble. In this kind of situation, if Lu Shi can escape. Wei Yong paused suspiciously for a moment, disdain appearing in the depths of his eyes. Then, this is probably fate. You never believed in this. Fan Chen and Wei Yong had a good relationship and had a certain understanding of the latter. Ever since the previous master Niel Yang died of illness, Wei Yong had changed. Fan Chen could not say exactly what had changed, but it was definitely not a good change. Fan Chen expressed his understanding of this. In the mortal world, boring bodies were everywhere, and interesting souls were 1 in 10,000. How rare was it to meet someone who understood him? After the previous master Niel Yang died of illness, while Wei Yong had not reached the level of broken zither and broken string, he had been somewhat disheartened. If the previous master had not entrusted his son Nia Qing to Wei Yong before he died, Wei Yong would have wanted to retire. Fan Chen was not making this up. Just from how Wei Yong addressed Nia Qing and Niel Yang, he could tell. Everyone had changed to address Nia Qing as Lord. Only Wei Yong stubbornly called him young master. He was clearly unwilling to accept the reality of Niel Yang's death. If Nia Qing was not Wei Yong's son-in-law and student, and the two were like father and son, just this address would have thoroughly offended Nia Qing. The old master had died of illness and been buried, but the old subject was still unwilling to accept reality. Where did Wei Yong plan to place the new master? No matter how broad-minded a person, once they reached this position, Nia Qing could not completely ignore it. Even if it was just a little dissatisfaction, over time, it would be enough to destroy the friendship between Nia Qing and Wei Yong. Thinking of this, Fan Chen reminded in a low voice to prevent Wei Yong from stepping on a landmine in the future. The previous master has passed away for a long time, and Zi Shun is a reasonable person. No matter how good your relationship with the present lord, you are not biological father and son. The way you address me, you should change it. Don't embarrass the lord. Out of the corner of his eyes, Wei Yong glanced at the orange afterglow on the horizon. His lips were tightly pursed, and he seemed a little stubborn. Fan Chen said, "The previous lord has already left." By doing this, other than making others look at the Lord differently and suspect that the Lord's position was not obtained through proper means, there is no other meaning. If someone uses this to make a big deal out of it, not only will Her Highness be passive, but you won't be able to get anything out of it either. Wei Yun said, "My lord hasn't really left yet." Fan Chen's heart jumped. The previous master wasn't dead? But, Wei Yong added, the scheme he set up before his death hasn't ended. How can you say that he's gone? Next time, speak more swiftly and finish it in one breath. Fan Chen nearly choked on his words as he grumbled, "You almost scared me to death." Wei Yong said calmly, "When this matter is over, Yong will personally apologize to the young master." Fan Chen laughed. "You are still so stubborn." On the other hand, Jiang Pengji had investigated more evidence that the Nia camp was preparing to withdraw its troops. Although the camp was still there and the patrolling troops were normal, the scouts secretly discovered that these patrolling soldiers appeared very frequently. A certain soldier with a scar on his face appeared 3 times in a short period of an hour. Obviously, the enemy wanted to use this to create the illusion that there were sufficient soldiers in the camp to cover up the fact that they were secretly withdrawing their troops. Qiguan Rang said, "In that case, Wei Yong's letter of challenge is also trying to cover it up. If they really waited for the agreed time to send out the troops, perhaps the enemy's camp would have already been emptied and they would have directly stood them up." Bai Ning stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Time waits for no man. My lord, please make a decision soon." If she hesitated any longer, they would be completely exposed. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and pondered. She was still hesitant and did not immediately give the order to send out the troops. Given Jiang Pengji's overly decisive character, this was extremely rare. Qiguan Rang asked her, "My lord, do you suspect that something is wrong? I can't put my feelings into words. I just feel that it's too smooth, and it's somewhat surreal." Jiang Pengji said, "The Nia clan mightily brought more than 200,000 troops to attack Zhanjiang Pass, but now they have to flee pathetically because of the internal strife. I always feel that it's very dramatic." Jiang Pengji thought for a long time before she found such a word to describe the current situation. The Nia clan had really attacked Zhanjiang Pass a few times, and Jiang Pengji had successfully stopped them. In the end, neither side gained any benefits. Jiang Pengji's side suffered great losses, but the Nia clan side suffered little. Nielyang had already folded in. Qiguan Rang said, "The battlefield is like this. Opportunities are fleeting. The Nia clan doesn't have the upper hand and there's internal strife. It's reasonable for them to withdraw their troops." "That's true." Jiang Pengji no longer hesitated. She successively gave several orders, and the generals stepped forward one by one. The tent was filled with a tense atmosphere of impending war. According to the scouts' investigation, the Nia camp's army had unusual movements in the middle of the night. It was calm during the day, so they most likely took advantage of the cover of the night to retreat in batches. Jiang Pengji set the timing for the battle at midnight to attack and pursue the enemy at night. Night fell quietly. On the other side, the general Qin Gong polished the weapons in his hands over and over again until they were shiny. The warhorses were also fed with horse fodder. Bai Ning laughed and teased Qin Gong. "You don't look like you're going to war. You look more like a handsome man meeting a beautiful woman in the middle of the night." Qin Gong was considered young among the people, but Bai Ning did not take advantage of his seniority. Instead, he treated him as an equal, so they had a good relationship. "General Bai, what are you talking about?" Qin Gong blushed. "I already have someone I like. It's easy to cause misunderstandings by saying these things." Bai Ning laughed. "She's not here. No matter how much I joke, she won't hear it." Qin Gong said seriously, "Even so, if I echo General Bai's words, it'll be too frivolous for her." Bai Ning curled his lips and said, "Fine, another papa ear." Qin Gong understood what papa ear meant, and he blushed a little. Bai Ning smiled and rested his hand on Qin Gong's shoulder. He joked, "When do you plan to get married? Let me attend the wedding banquet." Qin Gong raised a flag for the masses. "When this battle is over, she'll be of marriageable age. After I ask her elders for their opinion, I'll apply for leave from the Lord to prepare for the wedding." Although Su Yanxiao's parents and uncles had passed away, her eldest aunt and cousins were still alive. The Su family also had other members. If Su Yanxiao wanted to get married, those people had the right to know even if they didn't have the right to decide. Qin Gong's family had always been a vassal of the Su family. Su Yanxiao was the daughter of Su Fei, a direct branch of the Su family. If she really married him, there would definitely be people who would be dissatisfied. However, Qin Gong was not afraid of this. If Su Yanxiao was willing to marry him, he would protect her for life. Bai Ning laughed. There are many marriages in the world. You're lucky. Don't forget about the wedding banquet. Qin Gong said shyly, of course I won't forget. General Bai, you must drink until you're drunk. Chapter 1528. What's there to say? Jiang Pengji passed by in her military uniform. Her sharp ears overheard their conversation, so she interrupted and asked. Bai Ning laughed. Feng Jing is preparing to marry a beautiful lady. He'll be hosting a banquet. He wants me to go and drink until I'm drunk. Jiang Pengji glanced at Qin Gong. He had a bright and warm smile on his face. She could tell that he was in a good mood. Don't say things like, I'm going to get married after the war, wife and children will warm the Kong bed. Jiang Pengji also learned about the certain death flag from the audience. It was common in dramas and movies. The main character who spoke would definitely die. The purpose was to set off the tragic atmosphere. Even though Jiang Pengji herself had raised countless flags, it was indeed inauspicious to say such things before the war. Qin Gong asked in surprise, there's a saying for this? Jiang Pengji said, I don't know where I heard it, but those who said such things before the war basically never came back. Qin Gong's face turned pale. Bai Ning patted his shoulder and said in a rough voice, don't be afraid. Just spit a few times and take it back. It was originally a joke, but he didn't expect that Qin Gong would actually learn to do it seriously. He looked very cute. Jiang Pengji could not help but be speechless. I lied to you. You two actually believed it. Qin Gong opened his innocent eyes wide. Seeing that Jiang Pengji could not continue doing evil, she asked, do you really plan to marry Lady Su after the war? Qin Gong nodded. He was immediately stunned. He asked her, how did you know it was her, my lord? Jiang Pengji asked in return, if it wasn't for this intention, you wouldn't have to take care of everything even if she's the daughter of your former lord, right? That's what I think. Qin Gong said, after the war, I'll marry her. I can take care of her in the future. It's killing two birds with one stone. Even though Jiang Pengji did not mistreat the children of defeated vassals, she could not stand the tripping of her subordinates. Since the successive defeats of Su Fei and Su Pei, the Su family, which used to be like the sun in the sky, had completely quietened down. If Su Fei and his wife were still alive, as the daughter of a vassal, Su Yanxiao's marriage would definitely be top-notch. Now that Su Yanxiao's parents were dead and her immediate family was no longer around, Su Yanxiao's marriage fell into the hands of her eldest aunt. Eldest aunt didn't treat Su Yanxiao harshly, but she wasn't as attentive and loving as her mother. Marriage was even more out of the question. Most of the time, she would be married to the legitimate son of a small aristocratic family. If she was unlucky, she might even be married to a commoner who had recently risen to power. Once she got married, Qin Gong would have to avoid arousing suspicion and would not be able to protect her. Rather than worrying like this, it would be better to just marry her. He would treat her like a treasure. Qin Gong was Jiang Pengji's trusted general. If Su Yanxiao married him, no one would dare to underestimate her in the future. Jiang Pengji smiled. I'm so envious. Qin Gong was puzzled. Is my lord envious of this general? Jiang Pengji said, it's good to be young. Isn't it enviable? Qin Gong was confused. He didn't know what was so enviable about being young. This had nothing to do with what his lord had said before. But he could also tell that his lord was very much in favor of his marriage with Su Yanxiao. This made Qin Gong heave a sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid of anything else, but he was afraid that his lord wouldn't agree. If that happened, Qin Gong would be in a difficult position. He could either give up on Su Yanxiao or resign and live in seclusion. If he asked himself honestly, the possibility of him choosing the latter was higher. "Remember to leave a cup of wedding wine for me." Qin Gong smiled. "Yes, my lord." While they were chatting, the army was ready to set off. Jiang Pengji mounted her horse. "My lord, what are you doing?" Qin Gong was shocked. Was his lord going too? "It's not good to be idle all the time." "My bones are getting hard," Jiang Pengji said. "Let's set off." Qin Gong was speechless. Was it really because of this willful reason? Qin Gong missed his old lord Su Fei very much. Although Su Fei wasn't very smart, he wouldn't be so bold as to rush to the front lines. The army set off in 3 directions. Jiang Pengji's expression was not very good. Her brows were tightly knitted. She led the army and set off naturally, not because she wanted to fight a war. She just had a bad premonition. This was a kind of natural intuition that had been honed through countless life and death experiences. It was hard to explain, but this intuition had saved her many times. The army quietly approached the enemy's camp. The scouts who set off first quickly returned with news. "Reporting to my lord, the enemy's camp is empty. The shadows in the tents are all straw branches. Judging from the ashes of the bonfire in the camp, they should have left less than 15 minutes ago. They split into 3 directions to outflank the enemy's camp, but they didn't expect the enemy to have already retreated." Qin Gong and Bai Ning each led a group of troops. When they heard the scouts' report, they immediately gave the order to chase after them. The enemy left in a hurry. They left some heavy and clumsy military supplies and rations in the camp that were not suitable to be taken away. It could be seen that the enemy left in a hurry. If they caught up with the enemy at this time, they would definitely win a great victory when the enemy was unprepared. Jiang Pengji felt that something was wrong. Her troops did not move. She asked the scout, "How's the bonfire?" The scout said, "Some are still burning, some have been extinguished. It's a mess." Jiang Pengji asked again, "What about the footprints near the bonfire?" The scout recalled carefully and reported truthfully. The footprints near the bonfire were a little messy. Jiang Pengji asked a few more questions in succession, such as the layout of the enemy's camp. The more she listened, the more she frowned. The general who was sent by the military counselors to protect his lord was puzzled. He asked, "My lord, is there something wrong?" Jiang Pengji grabbed the reins and said coldly, "There are many things wrong." They had the energy to prepare straw branches to disguise as human shadows. It can be seen that they were quite calm when they retreated. If that's the case, the bonfire, documents, and objects shouldn't be so messy. The general's heart turned cold after he heard that. He exclaimed, "Could it be a trap?" Jiang Pengji sneered. "I'm afraid we've been fooled. Send 2 groups of troops to recall Qin Gong and the others. I'm afraid there's an ambush ahead." The general asked, "Don't we need to send troops to support them?" Jiang Pengji smiled. "We should also welcome our guests. Let's deal with the enemy first. Give the order, get into formation and face the enemy." Not long after Jiang Pengji finished speaking, the enemy's battle cries suddenly rang out in the previously empty enemy's camp. They seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Arrows rained down from the sky. The enemy's sneak attack was astonishingly fast. Many people were hit before they could react. "They're hiding underground." Jiang Pengji revealed how the enemy appeared out of thin air in one sentence. It wasn't that there was no one in the camp. They were all hiding underground. Because the camp was very messy, it was impossible for the soldiers to move the items and check them one by one. As long as the soldiers spread out their sleeping mats and covered the holes where they were hiding, they would basically not be discovered. Chapter 1529. What are you waiting for? Let's go back. Jiang Pengji pulled out her god-slaying sword. Her eyes were fierce. The deputy general said, "Yes, sir." Jiang Pengji wanted to rush out and kill to her heart's content, but she still needed to command the army to defend against the enemy's sneak attack and seize the opportunity to counterattack. The enemy seized the initiative. As soon as they arrived, they rained arrows and disrupted the army's formation. Under such circumstances, if there was no chief commander to command and dispatch, the casualties would be terrible when the enemy rushed in. Jiang Pengji was reckless, but she never delayed important matters. "I wonder how Feng Jing and the others are doing." These troops were indeed elites who had been trained for many years. Jiang Pengji often arranged military exercises and rehearsed all kinds of unexpected situations. Therefore, even though the enemy seized the initiative this time, they reacted after the first wave of arrows. They shrank their formation and adopted a defensive formation. This was the method of minimizing losses. At the same time, it could reflect the true combat quality of an army. At the same time, the scouts sent by Jiang Pengji also desperately chased after Qin Gong and Bai Ning's troops. Unfortunately, it was night and visibility was limited. It took them a lot of effort to find the route of the two troops. They hurriedly chased after them, which wasted a lot of time. By the time they caught up with the two troops, the situation had changed. Bai Ning was cautious by nature. Even if he led the troops to chase after the enemy, he would still consider his surroundings. Therefore, he was slower. When the scouts caught up, the army had not yet been ambushed. Bai Ning was also very surprised by the appearance of the scouts. The scouts did not have time to turn over and dismount from their horses. They directly conveyed the order. "Retreat." Bai Ning was stunned at first, then he immediately understood something. He immediately ordered the army to turn around and retreat. However, the enemy was secretly watching them. The army's retreat was obvious, so they could not sit still. The originally pitch-black Kull suddenly lit up with countless orange flames, and countless fire arrows descended from the sky. Bai Ning was shocked, but he still looked calm on the surface. The soldiers also seemed to have taken a tranquilizer. They defended and retreated in an orderly manner at the same time. Was he not panicking? How could it be? He was panicking to death. He never thought that this was a trap set by the enemy. However, Bai Ning knew that as the chief commander, he could not panic. Once he panicked, the army would be like headless flies. They would run around without order and be surrounded and killed by the enemy sooner or later. If Bai Ning's luck was considered good, then Qin Gong's side was quite unlucky. He had completely stepped into the enemy's trap. When the scouts arrived, the scene was already in chaos. The two armies were fighting each other. The light of the fire spread, almost turning this part of the world into daylight. The soldiers' battle cries were sharp and resounding, as if they were about to pierce through one's eardrums. The enemy's sneak attack was quite sudden. Although Qin Gong was not injured, he remembered the time when he followed Yang Si and was blocked by Han Yu in the Longsu Canyon. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. What kind of lousy luck did he have to be ambushed time and time again? It used to be Han Yu, and now it was Wei Yong. However, they were lucky to have been saved by the Lord last time. Now, they could only rely on themselves and the soldiers around them. If he didn't fight for a way out, he would probably be buried here. At this moment, Qin Gong was still thinking about what his lord had said before he sent out the troops. It's better not to say things like, "I'm going to get married after this battle, so that my wife and children can stay by my side." I don't know where I heard this before, but those who said this before the war basically never came back. Never to return. The enemy had set up this sneak attack with the intention of making them never come back. Qin Gong didn't want to die here. He still had to make contributions and accumulate merits, so that he could go back and marry the eldest lady of the Su family and protect her for the rest of her life. In the distant rear, Su Yanxiao suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. The maid who was sleeping outside put on some clothes and came over. "Is the eldest lady going to get up at night?" When the maid brought the candle closer, she saw that Su Yanxiao's nightgown was almost soaked with sweat. "No. I just had a very scary dream, but now that I'm awake, I can't remember what it was," the maid also said. "Look at the eldest lady's face covered with sweat, it must have been a nightmare. I'm going to ask the kitchen to prepare a bowl of soup for you." Su Yanxiao shook her head. "No, it's the middle of the night. I won't be able to sleep after drinking soup." The maid said, "If that's the case, I'll stay and talk with the eldest lady for a while." Su Yanxiao nodded lightly. The maid beside her was sent by Qin Gong. She was careful, considerate, and efficient. She quite liked her. When she thought of Qin Gong, an unexplainable panic rose in her left chest. "Eldest lady, are you feeling uncomfortable?" The maid saw her raising her hand to cover her chest, frowning slightly, and her lips pale. She suddenly became nervous. Su Yanxiao said, "The dream I had just now seemed to be related to Qin Sanlang. Did something happen to him at the front?" Since the two of them had a tacit understanding, Su Yanxiao changed the way she addressed him and called him Qin Sanlang. It was neither too intimate nor too distant. The maid said, "Old people always say that dreams are the opposite of reality. Qin Langjun is good at fighting, how could something happen to him?" Su Yanxiao was skeptical, but she still felt uneasy. The maid tried to coax her to sleep. Su Yanxiao couldn't help but put her hand under the pillow, and her fingertips touched a cold jade hairpin. "I learned it from the craftsman. This fox hairpin is crudely carved. When the war at the front is over, I'll give it to the eldest lady." Su Yanxiao couldn't help but hold it tightly, as if it could absorb some strength. "You said you would come back and marry me." She had been embroidering a wedding dress these days, and it would be finished in half a year, just in time for her hairpin ceremony. After that, they would get married. The maid heard her whisper and laughed. Apart from the eldest lady, who else could Qin Langjun have in his heart? Su Yanxiao couldn't help but blush, and her flustered mood calmed down a lot. The situation on Qin Gong's side was indeed not that bad. Relying on the valiant fighting quality of the army, even if the enemy's attack was fierce, they could still maintain their formation and not collapse. As the battle dragged on, the situation gradually stabilized. After all, Qin Gong was a mortal, and he couldn't be invulnerable. He was seriously injured in the chaos, but he didn't seem to feel it. He commanded the enemy to kill, and seized the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. "We shouldn't continue fighting. Since this is the enemy's trap, the longer we delay, the more disadvantageous it will be for us." Qin Gong was injured, but his mind was very clear. In the face of the enemy's ambush, they could only try to reduce their losses. Of the 36 stratagems, retreat is the best. The deputy general on the side said, "General, do you feel that something is wrong?" Qin Gong covered his arm, and his expression was somewhat fierce. "The number of the enemy's troops is strange. They most likely divided their troops to attack Zhangjiang Pass. Since this was a killing trap set by the enemy, it meant that the previous retreat of the Nia family due to internal strife was fake. The enemy still had more than 200,000 troops. Even if they divided their troops into 3 groups, the number of troops lying in ambush was obviously not that many. It was not difficult to speculate that the enemy was very likely to transfer the remaining troops to attack Zhangjiang Pass. Luring the enemy into the trap, luring the tiger away from the mountain, one was linked to the other, and it was clearly a killing trap. The deputy general said, "General, what should we do?" Chapter 1530. I've long heard that Lu Shi has many elites under his command, but I didn't expect that we couldn't keep them here. Fan Chen watched as the enemy fought and retreated, and his heart was filled with impatience and indescribable helplessness. If it had been any other vassal's army, they would have long been thrown into disarray after encountering such an ambush. Not to mention retreating in a short period of time, it was already a blessing from the heavens that the entire army had not been wiped out. Comparisons were odious. Was Jiang Pengji born to teach other feudal vassals how to behave? Jiang Pengji was not only the legendary child of another family, but also the lord of another family. There was nothing to be envious of. The trusted general in charge of the ambush rode forward and asked Fan Chen's opinion with a solemn expression. "Military counselor, should we pursue them?" "Of course. Zishuan has given a strict order to delay as much time as possible." Fan Chen raised his hand to wipe the hot sweat from his forehead. His inner shirt, which was stuck to his neck, was drenched. He said, "Lu Shi's subordinates are all clever. I guess they've discovered that the number of troops ambushing them isn't right. Even if they think with their toes, they'll know that we'll deploy troops to attack Zhangjiang Pass." "Yes, sir." The general didn't dare to waste time. He ordered the troops to pursue the enemy. They couldn't let the enemy ruin their plan. "General, they're catching up." The deputy general's face was covered in blood. Only his black eyes were clean. "Don't panic. Just fight and retreat." Qin Gong's expression was firm. His face was covered in blood, making the brown scar on his face look even more terrifying. "Is that Nya camp ahead? When we left, the fire wasn't so strong." The deputy general said, "General, do you mean, there are enemies over there?" Qin Gong's expression was solemn. "The Lord is ambushed over there. We have to rush there no matter what." According to the scouts sent by the Lord, she was ambushed at Nya camp. However, Nya camp had long been empty. Where did the ambush come from? After thinking about it, Qin Gong thought of the underground. The enemy was most likely hiding underground and hiding from the eyes and ears of our army. However, how did they hide the soil from our scouts when they dug so many pits to hide people? The person who arranged this ambush was truly terrifying. Whether it was in terms of scheming a person's heart or in other aspects, it was almost flawless. Si Jiang had a bad feeling when he heard this. The Lord had been ambushed in the enemy's lair. What kind of F***CK was that? Zhangjiang Pass? Not only was the deputy general worried about his lord, but he was also worried about his own nest. He was really worried that his nest would be destroyed. Qin Gong said confidently, "Zhangjiang Pass has sufficient troops, and there are a few strategists overseeing it. We won't lose it." Due to the enemy's relentless pursuit, Qin Gong's side had to pay a few more casualties before they managed to shake off their pursuers. Along the way, they bumped into the remnants of Bai Ning's army. If they hadn't reacted in time, they might have had to fight in the dark. "Brother Qin, you're not dead, right?" Qin Gong smiled bitterly as he pulled out the arrow from his arm. He took out a piece of cloth and tied it around the wound, temporarily stopping the bleeding. He was in so much pain that his face was pale. He said in a loud voice, "I'm not dead. I'm alive and kicking." Bai Ning said, "Reorganize the troops, turn around, and kill these bugs that are chasing us." Qin Gong panted heavily and said, "The Lord has been ambushed. General Bai, it's better not to continue fighting." Bai Ning waved his hand and said casually, "That's easy. Brother Qin, take half of the troops to support the Lord. I'll lead some people to delay the pursuers." At that moment, there was no better way. Qin Gong cupped his fists and said, "General Bai, take care." "No problem." Bai Ning laughed. "I didn't get to drink your wedding wine and my precious daughter's wedding wine. When I go to hell, I'll make a scene." Qin Gong ordered half of the troops to support Jiang Pengji. Seeing that he had left, Bai Ning angrily spat out a mouthful of blood and clenched the blood-stained weapon in his hand. The sticky blood had dried up, and some of it was still warm. He shouted in the direction of the enemy. "All troops, fall into formation." As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers on the side raised their horns and blew them to convey the military order. As soon as the military order was given, the soldiers with shields lined up in the first echelon, forming a thick defensive wall on one side. The other hand held a long spear that was more than 10 feet long to block the first enemy that rushed up. The second echelon of soldiers also held long spears and assisted in cleaning up the fish that slipped through the net. The archers were in the third echelon, trying their best to seize the opportunity to cause heavy damage to the enemy. Bai Ning said in a gruff voice, "I'm standing here. No one can get past me." Although Bai Ning was not young, his archery skills were ranked among the best in the army. His specialty was shooting 7 arrows at the same time. He used a 2-stone heavy bow. When he shot an arrow, not only could he poke a hole in a person's head, but he could also skewer the next person. The eyes of the two sides were bloodshot. Bai Ning's quiver was out of ammunition, so he picked up his weapon and rushed forward. He killed until his weapon was bent. At the same time, the situation on Jiang Pengji's side was much better than Bai Ning and Qin Gong had imagined. Apart from the unexpected first wave of sneak attacks, they basically did not suffer much in the subsequent confrontations. People could not see the entire battle situation, but Jiang Pengji had a spiritual realm. Within the realm, even flying insects and mosquitoes were under her control, not to mention people. She knew where the army was the weakest, where they needed support, and where the enemy could break through. Under her command, the army calmly withdrew from the enemy's ambush. How could the enemy let go of a fat piece of meat that was already in their mouths? Of course, they would bite like mad dogs. "My lord, the reinforcements are here." Jiang Pengji frowned slightly. "What's going on with the reinforcements?" It was impossible for reinforcements to come at this time. Jiang Pengji was a very cautious person. Even if she led the army to attack the enemy, she was prepared for a sneak attack on her base. It was better to be safe than sorry. Even if all the information showed that Nie Liang did not have the opportunity to clean up the hidden dangers within the Nie family, Jiang Pengji had laughed at this point. At that time, she mocked Nie Liang for being too soft on his people, but in the end, he was the one who suffered the consequences. The last time she received news from the Nie family was only 3 to 5 days before Nie Liang died of illness. The few tumors of the Nie family were still alive and well. According to the time of Nie Liang's death, even if he instructed Wei Yong and the others to clean up the tumors before he died, it was reasonable to say that it was too late. Due to various reasons, Jiang Pengji was skeptical about the two speculations of internal strife in the Nie family and Wei Yong's withdrawal of troops. Now that they had encountered an ambush, it proved that the two speculations were false. Not only did Wei Yong not withdraw his troops, but it was very likely that he had mobilized his troops to attack Zhanjiang Pass. The ambush was just a ploy to delay the troops. Countless thoughts flashed through Jiang Pengji's mind. The soldier said, the reinforcements were brought by General Qin. Not long after he finished speaking, Qin Gong, who was covered in blood, had already ridden forward. "My lord, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Jiang Pengji asked, "Did you meet General Bai on the way?" Chapter 1531. My lord, Zhanjiang Pass. Although Qin Gong looked confident, he was not sure if Zhanjiang Pass could be defended against a sneak attack. Jiang Pengji said, "Don't worry. I told Wen Zheng and the rest to be careful before the army set off. Zhanjiang Pass will definitely not be lost." Qin Gong was slightly relieved, but he still had doubts. Jiang Pengji noticed this and smiled to comfort him. "If Zhanjiang Pass is breached, I will hug the keyboard and kneel in front of the old chief until I die." Qin Gong was speechless. Old chief? Keyboard? What the hell? Jiang Pengji coughed softly and covered up her words perfectly. She was getting more and more adept at lying. The old chief was the one who gave me the strange book in my dream. Later, he continued to teach me in my dream. He's like a teacher and a friend. Qin Gong suddenly realized. I see. What she said was not entirely false. The old chief had indeed trained her meticulously in the few years between choosing his successor and retiring. Teacher and friend. It was not wrong to use these words to describe their relationship. Jiang Pengji was a wolf. She was aggressive and liked to cause trouble. She wanted to challenge the authority and position of the alpha wolf all the time. The new and old chief often fought because of disagreements. The old chief was a man who looked like a smiling tiger but was tough on the inside. Jiang Pengji was tough and arrogant from the inside out. One was the alpha wolf who was about to retire, the other was the new alpha wolf. It would be strange if they did not fight. Of course, the old chief had been a commander for more than 100 years and had been through countless wars. Jiang Pengji was still a new driver on the road. Even if she could fight, she was tortured badly at first. Later on, she barely managed to fight to a draw. It was the only time they tied. Jiang Pengji suspected that the other party went easy on her. I'm leaving tomorrow. The 7th Army is the best army in the Federation. I hope you don't ruin its reputation. Jiang Pengji was so tired that she could not even move her fingers. Her mouth was still hard and smelly. The future belongs to more outstanding young people. The 7th Army will become stronger and sharper in my hands. No one will dare to offend me. Look at what she said. She was just short of saying that the other party was old and should have given up his position long ago. However, the old general smiled and said, "All right, I'll leave the faith of the 7th Army to you." The two women were sweating profusely as they lay on the training ground. Compared to Jiang Pengji's disheveled appearance, the other woman was still standing. I still don't know why the old general retired. You're not old enough to retire. The average lifespan of a commoner in the Federation was around 250 years. Someone like Jiang Pengji could live up to 500 years. At that time, the old chief was only a little more than 200. He was at the prime of his life. Otherwise, he would not have been able to suppress Jiang Pengji, who was an unreasonable wolf cub. In fact, this old commander's position in the Federation was second only to the marshal, and he was extremely experienced. Just because they had a lifespan of 500 years did not mean that they would live to be 500 years old. The average lifespan of a soldier in the army was less than 100 years old. Even though a legion commander was a high-ranking member of the army, it was still a high-risk job. 99% of legion commanders died on the front lines. Very few of them died of old age, let alone retire midway. At that time, many people even mocked the 1st Battle Legion for producing a coward who was afraid of death. My body is not suited to stay in this position. It looks fine now, but I don't know when it will collapse. You'll know the inside story when you have a higher level of authority. The old chief sighed. The 7th Legion has always been the vanguard with the strongest combat power. I won't be able to hold on for long, but the 7th Legion must have a capable and unyielding successor who can carry the flag. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Was it because she was the best at fighting? If the old chief's current combat state was not good, then what about when he was at his peak? The more she thought about it, the more annoyed she became. The old chief sneered. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about when I'll be able to press you to the ground and beat you up. Heh, you went easy on me just now. The amount of water you used was comparable to a dam releasing water. Was she a salted fish that needed to go easy on him? You haven't awakened yet. Even if my condition has deteriorated, I won't lose to a girl who hasn't awakened yet. Jiang Pengji looked at the rising flames in the Nya camp. She did not know why she thought of the past. At that time, she was too tired. She was exhausted after the fierce battle. In the end, the old chief carried her to the warm cabin like a burlap sack. When she woke up, the old chief had already packed his things and left the military headquarters. Jiang Pengji was in a hurry to take office. The front line of the Federation was at war again, so she forgot about this matter. Now that she thought about it, she suddenly remembered something. What the hell did the old chief mean by awakening? It was fine if she did not remember, but now that she remembered, she had to clarify. It was the same logic as obsessive-compulsive disorder. She would feel uncomfortable if she did not clarify. However, before that, there was one more thing to do. Jiang Pengji took Qin Gong and the troops under her tent to rescue Bai Ning. Bai Ning was in a sorry state at that moment. His arms and thighs were injured, and the armor on his body was tattered. Many parts of the armor were pockmarked by the enemy's weapons. If it was not for the fact that the armor was well made and that he had been injured for Bai Ning a few times, he would have been dismounted and trampled into meat paste by the chaotic army. He did not have time to check the condition of his wound. After killing a wave of enemies in a hurry, he used a strip of cloth to stop the bleeding. His left hand was almost numb. Their side suffered heavy casualties, but the enemy did not gain much advantage either. The number of casualties was also high. However, because of the disparity in military strength, Bai Ning's side could not hold on for much longer. Once the army's formation was broken by the enemy, the result would be 1,000 miles of retreat and they would be crushed into meat paste by the enemy. Let's fight to the death with these bastards. It's not a loss to die here. Bai Ning's eyes were bloodshot. Even though he was injured all over, he did not care. Kill one to recoup his losses, kill two to earn a small profit. Even if he died, he would drag a few more down with him. Just as Bai Ning was about to launch the last attack, the enemy ordered the archers to release a rain of arrows again. In the end, an unexpected turn of events occurred. Because it was night time, the pale golden ripples that shrouded the army were particularly clear. A miracle? Nie Jun saw this, and his high and mighty momentum instantly dropped. The arrows stopped in midair as if they were intercepted by the layer of ripples. They lost their momentum and fell with a rustle, hitting Bai Ning's head. My lord is here? He had seen this scene before, and he was sure that it was his lord. Is his life more important than yours? Jiang Pengji led the troops over. When she saw Bai Ning's sorry state, she suddenly became angry. Are a bunch of good-for-nothings worth paying with your life? Jiang Pengji reprimanded Bai Ning angrily. Bai Ning was prepared to fight to the death, but now that his lord was here, he did not know what expression to put on. He could only listen to the reprimand obediently. Little did he know that his seemingly majestic lord was also being reprimanded by another person. You Abba, you were ambushed and attacked. Where is your spiritual realm? Jiang Pengji quibbled, I didn't want to cheat too much, so my realm only covered a few feet around me. You Abba, it's obvious that you've been pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger for too long. What's the use of these excuses? The old chief's mouth is quite sharp. You Abba, if you return to the Federation in this state, won't the 7th Army be assimilated into a pig farm? Not using too much ability doesn't mean that you have to be schemed against like real people in ancient times. Jiang Xiaojiu, I've prepared the keyboard for you. Chapter 1532. My lord? Bai Ning clearly felt that his lord's mood was not right. He didn't dare to raise his voice for fear of igniting the firecracker. Jiang Pengji gripped the hilt of her sword tightly and sneered, order the soldiers to get into formation and face the enemy. Tonight, no one can leave. Bai Ning's body trembled, and his voice was like thunder. Yes, my lord. Ordinary soldiers couldn't feel it, but Qin Gong and Bai Ning, who were near Jiang Pengji, were secretly shocked. Most of the generals who had some achievements in martial arts could feel qi, such as the enemy's murderous aura and the murderous intent in the dark. Their awareness combined with their reflexes, which had been trained for a long time, allowed them to avoid many fatal attacks. The stronger their martial arts, the clearer their perception. There was no doubt that Qin Gong, who became famous at a young age, and Bai Ning, who was experienced and ruthless, belonged to this category. They clearly felt a strong murderous intent emanating from their lord's body. Not only did they feel uncomfortable, but the warhorses around them were also affected. Bai Ning didn't care about the injuries on his body. He was speechless and said, "My God, how many people has my lord killed?" To cultivate such a murderous aura, it was probably not enough to kill 1,000 people. She probably needed to kill 10,000 people. No matter how many times he tried, Bai Ning couldn't associate his lord, who was usually playful, angry, and talkative, with her decisive killing on the battlefield. It was like he couldn't bear to see Li Hanmei kill people on the battlefield with a gun and go home to pick up a sweater to knit. Jiang Pengji acted as if she didn't hear Bai Ning's complaints. She gave several military orders in a row. The enemies who caught up were shocked and they saw the formation. Some of the generals couldn't help but sneer. Are the troops under Liu Shi's command indulging in fantasy? Isn't that right? Now they're like stray dogs. How can a group of defeated generals and soldiers make a comeback? Some people sneered. Naturally, there were also people who were secretly shocked. Some even had the idea of fighting back. The reinforcements who arrived late didn't see it, but the first batch of soldiers who surrounded Bai Ning saw a miracle again. The sky full of arrows was blocked by a layer of strange golden ripples. The gods had personally participated in the battle. They were just a group of ordinary people. Could they defeat the gods? Thus, one wave of soldiers had high morale, while the other wave had low morale. When the two were compared, the effect was very obvious. No matter how the general scolded them, the group of soldiers did not dare to move forward. Some of them even muttered things like, "God is coming," and "God will curse us to death." Their legs were trembling and their hands were weak. They were so scared that they pushed back. Seeing this, the general could only attack angrily. He chopped off the heads of 3 or 4 deserters, intimidating the group of soldiers in an instant. Whoever dares to take a step back will end up like this. The soldiers at the front were still dealing with the enemy, but these cowards actually wanted to desert. It was better for them to die so as not to affect the morale of the army. The soldier cried, "It's not that we want to escape. It's obviously that God is here. God is here. Arrows can't hurt them." The general sneered, "Can't injure him? Spouting nonsense and disturbing the morale of the army, this is a crime worthy of death." After saying that, the general cut off the soldier's head. Because he used a lot of strength, he even cut off half of the soldier's upper body. After killing more than 10 people in a row, the chaos was finally suppressed. The cowardly soldiers could only charge forward again. The general revealed a disdainful sneer and shook off the warm blood on the blade. What God? What can't hurt them? If they had this ability, what happened to those enemy soldiers who died tragically because of their sneak attack? The two armies fought fiercely and both sides suffered casualties. Didn't they see that the enemy not only had the corpses of their own soldiers, but also the corpses of the enemy soldiers? What God? It's just a cheap trick to shake the morale of the army. What happened at the front line? Fan Chen came late and did not see the miracle. He only saw some of the soldiers being afraid to fight and disrupting the army formation, so he sent people out to suppress them. The general cupped his fists and reported, "It's just the enemy deliberately mystifying things, using some miracle to scare people." Fan Chen raised his eyebrows. "Miracle? What miracle?" The general roughly explained the process. Fan Chen frowned after listening. Is there something wrong? The general asked. Fan Chen suddenly thought of something. His expression was faintly excited, and the hand holding the reins trembled slightly. His breathing was rapid and excited, and he almost lost his voice. Maybe Lu Shi is also here. The general's eyes widened as if he did not hear what Fan Chen said. What did he mean by, Lu Shi is also here? Fan Chen said, Lu Shi is a person with unparalleled combat power. According to investigations, during the 3 years she was studying in Langjia County, she often fought fiercely with others. Now that she has become a duke, she still does not change her bad habits. She goes to the front line to fight generals, and even more, she even wants to get involved in a chaotic battle between 2 armies. This was not the first time the general had heard this, but he always found it unbelievable. Why did the people always say, good men don't become soldiers, good women don't marry? It was not only because being a soldier was lowly and difficult to stand out, but also because the survival rate was low. No one wanted to bring up their own son or new husband to fight on the battlefield. From this, it could be seen how touching the survival rate was and how dangerous the battle between the 2 armies was. Dignified dukes actually fought in a chaotic battle like ordinary soldiers. What would happen if they were mistakenly killed in front of the battle? Not to mention dukes, ordinary generals would not personally participate in a chaotic battle. Even if they participated in the battle to kill, they would bring 20 to 30 bodyguards with them. Soldiers were easy to find, but generals who knew how to fight were not easy to find. Every one of them was considered a gold mine, and they could not be lost. Generals were like this, let alone dukes. Lu Shi left Zhangjiang Pass. Fan Chen sneered. That so-called miracle has only appeared twice. According to the thinking of the ancients, not everyone could be blessed by the gods. They only knew of Jiangpengji. It was the same miracle, so could it be confirmed that Jiangpengji was also at the front line? If that was the case, Fan Chen could not easily let her go. Jiangpengji still had no heir. If she died here, the power she left behind would definitely collapse. Fan Chen was secretly calculating, but Jiangpengji, the person in question, seemed to be on steroids. She killed people so quickly that even her own people were afraid. The enemies in front of her were not like living people, but more like straws in the field. She was not holding a sickle to cut straws, she was clearly driving a reaper to reap the heads of rows of people. This was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that after killing so many people, her eyes were still clear. What did this prove? It only proved that the enemies were not human in her eyes. Perhaps they were not even comparable to chickens and ducks. Ordinary people would feel uncomfortable killing too many chickens. Fortunately, this person was their lord and not their enemy. Because it was dark at night and their field of vision was limited, Fan Chen and the others had not noticed this area. He ordered the troops to split up and attack the rear. As soon as the troops were mobilized, Jiangpengji knew his plan. Feng Jing, go to the rear and command. The enemies are coming. She retreated after killing for a while. As soon as she approached, Qin Gong smelled the suffocating smell of blood. Yes. Chapter 1533. As soon as Fan Chen moved, Jiangpengji knew that the sneak attack from the rear had failed. Instead, they had lost a lot of troops. I wonder how the battle at Zhangjiang Pass is. Jiangpengji was already covered in blood. She looked terrifying, but the blood belonged to the enemy. Not even a strand of her hair was missing. There was a beep next to her ear. The old chief had sent her a private message. Your Abba, if you want to know what's going on over there, just use your spiritual realm. Don't tell me you're that weak. Jiangpengji had transmigrated and changed into an ordinary person's body. It was understandable that her physical skills had declined, but it was not to the extent that her spiritual realm was weak. Lu Shi is an ordinary person. Excessive use of the spiritual realm will cause harm to this body. Besides, I haven't used it for years. I can't remember it now. Jiang Pengji smiled awkwardly. Her smile was covered by blood. Sincerity could not be seen. Instead, there was a hint of ferocity. It's not a good thing to be at ease for too long. I'm really worried that I won't be able to adapt to the pace of the Federation in the future. Although she said that, she still used her spiritual realm to take a look at the battle at Zhangjiang Pass. The city gate was secure. It had not been lost. The enemy had not succeeded yet. She quickly retracted it after taking a look. At the same time, Wei Xi looked in a certain direction outside Zhangjiang Pass. His eyes showed some confusion. Just now I seem to have sensed the Lord. Was it an illusion? There were 150,000 enemies outside Zhangjiang Pass. Their battle cries shook the heavens. Flames soared into the sky and lit up the place until it was a city that never slept. With the previous lesson, Wei Xi had brought enough troops and hundreds of catapults. The power of the siege was far greater than the previous time. As the saying goes, soldiers with arms and water with earth. No matter how many catapults the enemy had, the city gate was still secure. It was just that the battle on the city wall was particularly fierce. The stench of kerosene stimulated everyone's nerves. In everyone's eyes, there was nothing else but the enemy. Tonight, it was either the enemy or they who would die. What a tough bone to chew. He can still defend in this situation. The general of the Nia camp looked at the city wall covered with ladders and ropes. His expression was full of malice and ferocity. His black eyes were reflected by the flames. Wei Xi said, Lu Shi's vigilance is far beyond our imagination. If a sudden attack was launched, the defending side would not be prepared and would most likely be flustered. According to Nie Liang's plan before his death, Jiang Pengji was confident that she would dispatch the army to pursue the bait they had thrown out. The garrison at Zhangjiang Pass would be greatly weakened. They took advantage of the night to attack the city, and the enemy hastily responded. Faced with the Nie family's army that went all out, even if Jiang Pengji's side could resist for a while, they would definitely not be able to defend Zhangjiang Pass. In order to protect themselves, they could only lead their troops to abandon the pass and retreat. The result was a huge disappointment. Wei Long led his troops to attack Zhangjiang Pass. Although the enemy hastily responded to the battle, they did not immediately collapse. Reinforcements arrived just in time. Jiang Pengji was far more cautious and meticulous than he and Nie Liang had imagined. She was clearly a 22 or 23-year-old woman, but her way of doing things was more cautious and cunning than a 45-year-old man. She had already believed the news of Nie Jun's retreat, and in the end, she even ordered Zhangjiang Pass to be on high alert to prevent night attacks. He really didn't know whether he should say that she was doing something superfluous or praise her for being as cunning as a fox, treacherous and suspicious. The general said fiercely, "So what if we're vigilant? We must pass this trial tonight." This time, Nie Jun was determined to take down Zhangjiang Pass. If they did not succeed this time, they did not know when the next opportunity would come. Of course, we must pass Zhangjiang Pass tonight. No matter what price they had to pay. Looking at the huge fireballs being hurled by the catapults onto the walls of Zhangjiang Pass, the battlements, and even the city gates, Wei Long's state of mind was extremely calm. That Shizhong is still somewhat useful. Shizhong had been randomly slashed a few times by bandits with a hatchet. His right hand could not write for a short period of time. The wound on his cheek was too deep, causing his left eye to be completely blind. There was also an extremely long wound from his left shoulder to his collarbone. With such a serious injury, even if he had amazing willpower to copy and memorize the blueprint, his hands were not strong enough. He could not draw such a detailed blueprint at all. Since he could not draw, he thought of a plan and simply verbally explained. He verbally improved the existing armaments, such as coating the stones of the catapults with a layer of kerosene and igniting them before they were hurled. The lethality of fireballs and simple stones was not the same. After Shi Zhong's improvements, the catapults did indeed cause great pressure to the pass. Without Jiang Pengji, the godly archer, and due to the weather, the soldiers controlling the ballistae could not effectively destroy the enemy's catapults. After such a long time, they had only destroyed 4 or 5 catapults. In desperation, Wei Ci could only order the catapults on the city walls to aim at the enemy's catapults. The efficiency was much higher than destroying the catapults with the ballistae. At the same time, they could also target the enemy's archers. There was still a stalemate above and below the city walls. For the time being, Zhanjiang Pass was not in danger of being lost. Jiang Pengji's side was much more relaxed. Even if the enemy outnumbered them, with her precise command, she could always make the enemy suffer losses. Not only that, she also took the time to ask the old chief about it, lest she forgot about it after the war. I remember before the old chief retired, he once mentioned awakening. What is that? You Abba, you're still half-hearted in war. If your subordinates knew about this, how would they feel? Don't change the topic. There was silence on the other side for a while, as if she had to rack her brains to think of a few sentences. You Abba, about this matter. Sigh, the child has no mother. It's a long story. Make the long story short. You Abba, the current power system of the Federation focuses on developing the limits of the human body. The key lies in the genes. Under normal circumstances, the genes of ordinary people will evolve with the development of inheritance from generation to generation. However, some geniuses can condense the evolution of hundreds or even thousands of years into a few short years. This is genetic unlocking, completely unlocking the shackles and exploding the limits of the human body. However, no one can answer how many genetic locks exist. Perhaps the end is the eternal life that all scientists dream of. Jiang Pengji frowned slightly. You Abba, I'm going off topic. The awakening I mentioned is essentially similar to genetic unlocking, but it's also different. The latter is to develop the potential of the human body, while the former is to trace back to the source and return to the ancestral inheritance. Why do you think the direct descendants of the Jiang family were attacked by the forces of the heavenly brain? Because the direct descendants of the Jiang family have an ancient bloodline. You are the last direct descendant, and at the same time, the only one who has the chance to awaken the ancestral power. This power is what the defector heavenly brain fears the most. Only you can completely kill it. What if I can't awaken? You Abba, die. The Federation will be buried with you. Don't worry, I'll mail you the best coffin. Heartless woman. Jiang Pengji curled her lips. No, this body belongs to Lu Shi. How can I awaken? You Abba, the ancient bloodline of the Jiang family is rather special. It doesn't attach to the body, but to the soul. Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes, as if remembering something. The awakening thing can change hair color? Chapter 1534. Changing gender? So vicious? Jiang Pengji said that, but her eyes lit up. She was eager to try. You Abba, what do you want to do? Based on her understanding of Jiang Pengji, it was probably not a good thing. She had no integrity at all. Jiang Pengji said, well, we are all adults. Let's not beat around the bush. I want to cry Zixiao. Your Abba, you should really let your little girl see what kind of animal you are. What kind of tricks are you thinking about? Jiang Pengji muttered, just tell me if it's possible. You Abba, no, give up. The Jiang family's atavistic ability is fire control. It doesn't support gender change. Fire control? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but complain, isn't this the same ability derived from unlocking my genes? She thought it would be some amazing special ability. In the end, it was just playing with fire. You Abba, it's different. Before the awakening, it was normal fire. After the awakening, the fire can burn everything. It's said to be the fire of extreme yang that can cleanse everything. Even the Federation's warships with the strongest defense can't withstand the damage of that kind of fire. Not only can it burn physical bodies, but it can also burn spiritual energy in life. Awakening the ancient bloodline ability, apart from the change of the fire, will also strengthen the body by 100 times. At the same time, it will greatly increase one's lifespan. Sky Brain hated the direct descendants of the Jiang family. Besides the old grudge from 2,000 years ago, there was another reason. Jiang Pengji echoed, "It's really good. I won't need flint to start a fire in the future." You Abba. To be honest, if your ancestors heard what you said, they would most likely die with grievances. Including Jiang Pengji, there were only 3 awakened in 2,000 years. The first 2 were famous people who killed so many enemies of the Federation that they were terrified. But Jiang Pengji used them to start a fire? Be a little more promising, okay? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but roll her eyes. What was the use of her ability no matter how amazing it was? The enemy was a group of ordinary people. In order not to bully them, she restrained her spiritual domain. What else could she do? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but complain, "If I don't use it to start a fire, what else can I do? Didn't the old chief just say that the fire after awakening can burn spiritual energy?" In the words of this era, the human spirit is the so-called 3 souls and 7 spirits. This fire of mine is enough to extinguish a person's soul. It's just a war, there's no need to be so ruthless. All in all, this is a useless cheat. For the current her, it was indeed useless. Your Abba, his words were reasonable, and no one could refute him. Jiang Pengji's current state was like a main account with a full set of godly equipment going to the beginner's village. She could still defeat all the other players in the village without her godly equipment. To put it bluntly, it was meaningless to give her a set of godly equipment at that moment. The old commander felt that he should redeem himself. Your Abba, don't underestimate it. It will be very useful in the future. The old chief went offline, leaving Jiang Pengji with a lot of questions. Jiang Pengji looked at the chaotic battle and took a deep breath. She told herself again and again that this was a battle between ordinary people. She had to restrain herself. Although Jiang Pengji had been talking to the old chief for a few minutes, she did not stop killing the enemies. No matter if it was an enemy or a comrade, no one would have thought that Jiang Pengji could still be distracted by talking to someone while she was on a killing spree. If they knew, they would be so depressed that they would vomit blood. Of course, Fan Chen and the others were depressed enough. No matter how they ambushed or how they deployed their troops to attack, the enemy seemed to have predicted their actions in advance. Their defense was impenetrable. Even if they outnumbered the enemy by a lot, they did not have much of an advantage. At that moment, news came from the front line. Military advisor, the enemy has a valiant general. His combat power is really terrifying. The soldiers can't stop him at all. This statement was embellished. In fact, the soldiers in that area were scared out of their wits. Almost no one dared to advance and attack. If they did not take any measures, the enemy might use that area as a breakthrough and counterattack. Fan Chen asked, "Terrifying? How terrifying can he be? 100 people can't do anything to him." Fan Chen frowned slightly. It seemed that he did not expect Jiang Pengji to have such an inhuman existence. To describe someone's bravery, people always liked to use, 1 man can hold the pass against 10,000 or 1 man can fight against 100. Whether it was 10,000 or 1 man can fight against 100, the words 10,000 and 100 were empty words. The general idea was that there were many people, not really 10,000 or 100. Even if it was a highly skilled general, when faced with hundreds of enemies, he would most likely lose his life. No matter how skilled he was, he had 2 hands and 2 feet. There was a limit to his physical strength. It was impossible for him to not be tired or injured. If Jiang Pengji really had such a general under her command, she should have some reputation. Unless, a light flashed in Fan Chen's mind. He suddenly thought of something. He just speculated that Jiang Pengji was very likely to be at the front of the battle. At that moment, a young general with unparalleled bravery appeared. Could it be, how is Lu Shi's combat power? He asked the deputy general beside him. This deputy general was someone who had seen Jiang Pengji fight generals at the front of the battle. The deputy general answered honestly, "This person is a brave general that is rare in the world. If I were to fight him, I wouldn't last more than half a cup of tea." Jiang Pengji had fought generals at the front of the battle and killed several people in a row. Those generals were all ranked highly in the Nya camp. "Why are you suddenly asking about this, military counselor?" Fan Chen said, "Take a guess. Is it possible that the young general who reported to us just now is Lu Shi?" The deputy general was shocked by Fan Chen's speculation. Is this possible?" He expressed that he did not understand the way the vassal's brain worked. It was fine to fight generals. If one's martial strength was high, there was a high chance of survival in a one-on-one fight. However, it was a chaotic battle now. The soldiers of the 2 armies could only rely on the color of the cloth tied around their armors, necks, or arms to distinguish between the enemy and their allies. As a vassal, it was fine that she did not stay at the rear and came to launch a sneak attack. Now she even dared to intervene in a chaotic battle. He admired her for being a man. Fan Chen said coldly, "There is a 70% to 80% chance that it is accurate." Even if it was not accurate, Fan Chen wanted this young general to die here. Jiang Pengji had such a capable general under her command. It would greatly boost the morale of the 2 armies when they fought. It would be a disaster to keep him alive. Fan Chen's speculation was naturally correct. The person who was unrestrained and killed 300 enemy troops in a short time of half a stick of incense was Jiang Pengji. I feel like my identity has been exposed. After a while, Jiang Pengji clearly felt that the enemy was deliberately targeting her. Chapter 1535. The enemy underestimated the power of the iron whip. When they aimed their long spears at White, which was under Jiang Pengji's crotch, Jiang Pengji waved her long whip and tied up all their spears like a snake. She exerted strength in her wrists and easily snatched the spears from the hands of more than a dozen people. She flicked her whip again and returned the spears to the enemy. Some pierced through the cheeks, some aimed at the neck, and some pierced through the heart. They couldn't even touch Whitey, let alone hurt Jiang Pengji. That was a pain in the ass. Fan Chen was extremely dissatisfied with the progress. So many people couldn't take down one person. His warhorse is still full of vigor and vitality. The general said, "It's not that we are incompetent, it's because the enemy is too evil." Not to mention Jiang Pengji, the horse she was riding was evil. No matter how many people tried to stab the horse with their spears, they always hit an invisible but real barrier and couldn't move an inch. The soldiers were confused by the change. While they were in a daze, the general on the horse used his iron whip to sweep away the spears or directly hit the heads of the soldiers who surrounded him. It was not an exaggeration. The strength of the iron whip could really break the neck and send the head flying. The deputy general didn't even know how to describe how bloody and violent the scene was. Fan Chen said, "It's really Lu Shi. No matter what price we have to pay, we can't let this person live." The general sighed secretly and cupped his hands in acknowledgement. In order to arouse the fighting spirit of his soldiers, he directly called out Jiang Pengji's identity. As the saying goes, brave men are bound to be rewarded with a great reward. Under Fan Chen's instruction, the general showed the reward. This person is Lu Shi, the feudal lord. Whoever can take his head will be rewarded with 100,000 taels of gold and a title of nobility. 100,000 taels of gold? A title of nobility? The high reward made the eyes of the timid soldiers red. One by one, they rushed forward without a care for their lives. They were soldiers who hung their heads on their waistbands. There was no tomorrow, and they didn't know when they would be able to stand out. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, they had to fight for it even if it meant risking their lives. Maybe they could steal Jiang Pengji's head. Now that he had obtained the head, he would be rewarded with 100,000 gold coins and a noble title. He would only need to enjoy it for the rest of his life. When Jiang Pengji's identity was exposed, Bai Ning and the other two hurriedly sent soldiers to escort Jiang Pengji to retreat, but their lord refused. "A bunch of trash wants my head?" Jiang Pengji felt humiliated. Not to mention a group of ordinary soldiers, even her colleagues from her previous life did not have the confidence to take her head. Did they really think that her head was made of paper and that anyone could covet it? "You're courting death." Jiang Pengji alone attracted half of the enemy's firepower. The enemy archers aimed at her and White, who was under her crotch. Fan Chen felt that Jiang Pengji deserved to die, but he did not know that Jiang Pengji was a ghost. Even the king of hell did not dare to take her life. The rain of arrows came from all directions. Those that could be shot down would be shot down, and those that couldn't be shot down would be blocked by the spiritual domain. She did not have to worry even if the enemy rushed over. Sending someone's head from 1,000 miles away, the gift was light, but the sentiment was heavy. How could she not accept it? Bai Ning, who was seriously injured, was ordered by Jiang Pengji to command and dispatch. He could not easily go forward. He could only listen to the soldiers' battle reports. Through a few words, he knew what shocking feat his lord had done. The enemy's corpses around her could pile up into a small hill. Qin Gong's injuries were relatively light, so he could lead the troops to support Jiang Pengji. "I have to inform the military counselors about this when I get back." He was not a person who liked to snitch, but he really could not stand his lord running around with the enemy. If Qiguan Rang and the others were there, Jiang Pengji would not dare to be so brazen. They were not there, and Qin Gong and Bai Ning could not suppress her. Even if his lord bore a grudge, Qin Gong still had to snitch. The night was dark. The two armies were fighting to the death. Almost everyone had lost their minds. A soldier had just stabbed an enemy to death, but in the next second, the enemy's blade pierced him full of holes. While the battle here was in a stalemate, the killing at Zhanjiang Pass was even more tragic. Wei Yong had obviously come prepared this time. Even though Wei Xi and the others had already thought of ways to destroy more than 50 of their catapults, there were still brand new catapults pushed up by the soldiers to replace those that had been smashed to pieces. The firepower was fierce, and the attack did not decrease. It was very dangerous on the city wall. Qiguan Rang and the others could only retreat to command, so as to avoid being accidentally injured by the catapults. "My lord is very right about one thing, the Nie family is rich and powerful. We are really inferior to them." Qiguan Rang's newly made feather fan had long been burnt to a crisp. His sleeves were also burned with a few holes. He looked very pathetic. Wei Xi smiled bitterly when he heard that. The Nie family was indeed rich and powerful. Old Master Sun Wen said with a gloomy expression, they are determined to break through Zhangjiang Pass. If this situation continues, I'm afraid we won't be able to defend it. It was not that our army was not strong enough. It was just that the enemy's numbers and firepower exceeded the limits of what we could withstand. In this siege, the losses of both sides were more tragic than the previous one. If it was in the past, Wei Yong would have long retreated in the face of such a huge loss. But this time, it was as if he had taken the wrong medicine and was unforgiving. Qiguan Rang said, Wei Yong doesn't feel bad about such a huge loss. Wei Ci said, according to his character, he won't easily withdraw his troops at this time. Of course, it's best not to withdraw either. Qiguan Rang asked Wei Ci with his eyes. Wei Ci said, my lord is still outside Zhangjiang Pass. If eldest brother knows, he will definitely send troops back to help. My lord will be in danger. If Zhangjiang Pass was lost, it was lost. They could fight back sooner or later. But if my lord was gone, then it was really irreversible. Qiguan Rang sighed secretly. His lord was such a worrisome person. At this time, old Master Sun Wen said, if we can't defend it, we might as well retreat to Erdeo City. Wei Ci asked, Zidao means, to let go of Zhangjiang Pass. If my lord finds out, she will definitely be furious. Sun Wen said, this is called advancing by retreating. Jiang Pengji knew that the Nia family was difficult to deal with, so she was unusually cautious when defending. Not only did they build a barbican, but they also built a temporary city wall to cushion the enemy's troops. Sun Wen said, the area outside the city wall of Zhangjiang Pass is controlled by the enemy. It's also quite convenient for them to transport catapults and scaling ladders without any obstruction, but it's a burden for our army. It's better to let go of this city wall and retreat to Erdeo City. The distance between Guanmen Pass and Erdeo City is quite far. If the enemy wants to attack Erdeo City, they can only go through the city gate. Although the city gate is tall and wide, there are tens of thousands of enemies. It's impossible for all of them to rush in at once. It'll take even more time to transport ladders, catapults, and other supplies in. The newly built Erdeo City's defensive ability was slightly weaker, but it could still cushion the enemy's troops and buy time for their own side. If the enemy wanted to rush in, they would definitely disrupt the army's formation. It might even lead to the predicament of the reinforcements not being able to arrive in time. Because of the city gate, the enemy's catapults could not reach Erdeo City in time, imperceptibly weakening the enemy's combat power. Sometimes, a strategic retreat was also to lure the enemy into taking the bait. Chapter 1536. Wei Ci looked hesitant. Even if he knew that old Master Sun Wen's plan was feasible, there were too many variables. Since ancient times, how many fake retreats had become real collapses because of unforeseen events? Soldiers did not know the plans of their superiors. They only knew that if they were defeated by the enemy and fled, it would definitely affect the overall morale. Morale was something that could not be seen or touched, but it was too useful on the battlefield. With high morale, even rookies could chase elites around. With low morale, even the best elites could not defeat the enemy's grassroots. Wei Ci was not against old Master Sun Wen's plan. He just wanted to minimize the negative impact of a retreat. Seeing this, Qiguan Rang chose a compromise. Let me command here to resist for a while. The two of you go to Erdeo City to prepare for the enemy, Qiguan Rang said decisively. If we retreat at the last minute, the soldiers will think that we are no match for the Nia army. If we make arrangements in advance, the impact of the retreat should be minimized. Of course, Wei Ci could not agree to leave Qiguan Rang alone to command. Even with the help of several generals, he could not take care of the entire battle situation alone. At this moment, they were already stretched thin. If Wei Xia and Sun Wen left, Qiguan Rang would be under considerable pressure. Qiguan Rang shook his head and said, "There's no time to lose. Go and prepare as soon as possible. Looking at the situation, the city gate can still hold for a quarter of an hour." Wei Xia and Old Master Sun Wen looked at each other and did not continue to object. This was not the time to waste time. Any delay would cost countless lives. Someone. Qiguan Rang's eyes darkened. He summoned the soldiers and said, "Immediately send people to pile the extra stones at the entrance of the city gate." The enemy's attack was fierce. Even though the soldiers on the city gate had tried their best to kill the enemy soldiers carrying the siege logs, there would be another batch after they were killed. The enemy tried their best to cover them. When dozens of people carried the siege logs and hit the city gate, Qiguan Rang could feel the ground tremble slightly under his feet. Even though the main materials of the city gate were thick solid wood, bronze, and fine iron, it could not withstand such violent ravages. Since the city gate would be breached sooner or later, it was better to seize the time to block the enemy. "Military counselor, if the city gate is blocked." The general looked hesitant. He was one of the people who knew that his lord had led troops to attack the enemy at night. If the entrance was blocked, not only would it hinder the enemy, but it would also hinder the return of his lord. Qiguan Rang said coldly, "You only need to obey military orders and not question them in front of the battlefield. I know what to do in an emergency." The general cupped his fists and said, "Yes, sir." After saying that, he immediately ordered his men to use a portion of the stones to block the entrance of the city. The entrance to the city was blocked. Even if the enemy continued to use their siege weapons to break open the city gate, it would not be easy for them to charge into Zhangjiang Pass. Calculating, they should be able to delay for a while. Why are the two military counselors back? Could it be, Feng Yi was arranging for the soldiers to send the city defense equipment to the front line? Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Wei Xia and the other man rushing over. Her heart thumped. Wei Xia raised his hand to stop Feng Yi from speaking. He said briefly, "The frontline city gate has not fallen." Feng Yi's eyes were filled with worry. Even though they were so far away, he could still hear what was happening in Yidao City. He was constantly on tenterhooks, but there was a limit to what he could do. He could only try his best to do what he could. While busy, he enriched himself and gained experience. Sun Wen asked, "Where's Lan Lan?" Feng Yi said, "There are too many wounded soldiers sent over from the front line. To prevent chaos, Sun Lan is helping to direct the transfer of the wounded soldiers to the casualty barracks." When the two armies fought, the number of soldiers who died on the spot was not high. Most of the soldiers died because they were not treated in time. Jiang Pengji was clear about this. Naturally, she had to take measures to reduce the death rate. For this purpose, she even specially set up a combat medical battalion. The soldiers of this battalion had to learn a certain amount of first aid knowledge. They also had to learn combat skills from ordinary soldiers. Their duty was to specifically transfer the wounded soldiers who had lost their combat ability but were not yet dead. Their medical knowledge did not have to be better than the military doctors in the casualty barracks, but they had to know how to minimize the secondary damage of the wounded soldiers when transferring them. Their combat skills did not have to be better than the combat troops, but they had to learn how to protect themselves. The soldiers of this battalion were basically between the logistical medical unit and the frontline combat troops. Although they were not as good as the top, they were not weaker than the bottom. In a sense, they were more important. The number of wounded soldiers at the front line increased. The transfer was disorderly. Sun Lan took the initiative to ask for help. When Sun Wen heard this, he felt gratified and a little melancholy at the same time. He was also a person who had experienced great storms. Naturally, he knew what kind of place the logistical medical unit was. It looked like it was at the rear, but the scene was no less than hell on earth. In the past, Sun Lan had not even seen a chicken being slaughtered. He did not know if he could bear to see it all of a sudden. Old Master Sun Wen valued his grandson too much, so he subconsciously treated Sun Lan as a child. He did not know that his grandson had already grown up. War was the best way to train people. At first, Sun Lan helped to command and dispatch. Later, when he saw that there were not enough people, he also helped to carry stretchers and wounded soldiers. He went back and forth dozens, hundreds of times. The clothes on his shoulders were torn by the hemp ropes. The flesh on his shoulders and palms were rubbed until there were bloody blisters. His originally clean clothes were also dyed red by the blood of the wounded soldiers. From afar, he looked like a bloody man. There was more determination between his brows. How could one still see his past appearance? He happened to hear the news that the front line was about to retreat. He suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. It was as if his soul was about to leave his body. Grandfather Sun Wen was at the front line. How was he now? Grandfather, Sun Lan looked at the blazing flames on the horizon. His heart almost twisted into a ball. However, he had no time to inquire about his grandfather's news. He could only grit his teeth and suppress all his worries. The huge medical unit was full of wounded soldiers. Some were lucky enough to get stretchers or straw mats. Most of the soldiers could only lie on the ground. Those with less serious injuries leaned against each other to reduce the space they occupied. Because the female military doctors were short of manpower, the medical supplies were also somewhat stretched. Many soldiers only had time to hastily clean their wounds, stitch them up, and bandage them. The rest was up to fate. The seemingly crude medical methods were very comprehensive in this era. Overall, the death rate of the soldiers under Jiang Pengji's command was also the lowest in the same period. Listening to the cries of the wounded soldiers, Sun Lan took a deep breath. He suddenly had an unprecedented impulse. However, he quickly shook the thought out of his mind. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.